Meeting to order at approximately 6:31 p.m. Present with me, I have Councilor Cocaine Givner, committee member, myself, Israel Rivera, committee chair. Our other committee member could not make it tonight, we also have present with us Councilor Jose MALDONADO-VELEZ, and online, no other councilors to recognize. I'll entertain a motion to take up the first item. No, I think it makes
motion to take up item 1.
Second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 1 was filed by Councilor Jenny Rivera and Councilor Jose MALDONADO-VELEZ. Order that the Board of Health, Police, or appropriate department let us know the process of addressing noise complaints, particularly when it comes to business operating their heavy machinery and making lots of noises as early as 5:30 a.m. The residents of Ward 1 say they have submitted complaints and nothing has been done to remedy the situation. I do not see Councilor Rivera with us at the moment. Oh, she won't be able to make it, but Councilor MALDONADO-VELEZ, as a co-filer, would you like to speak on the order?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the reason, first apologize if I'm mumbling more than usual. I'm just getting over a cold. With that said, hold on. The reason why we filed this order, there's been a couple complaints. Sullivan Scrap, I believe, down in the flats, and there's another business on Mosher and Canal that are operating before as early as 5:30 in the morning. Just like the order says, I know Councilor Rivera has gotten a couple complaints. I've gotten some complaints. I know Councilor Rivera has spoken with the business owners, and it gets better for like a month or two, and then the noise just picks back up again as early as 5:30 in the morning. You know, the residents there understand that they live in an industrial zone, like these businesses are going to be operating as early as 8 a.m. as per our ordinance, but not as early as 5:30. So really, we just want to try to figure out how can we best respond to noise issues when it comes to businesses operating as early as, again, 5:30 in the morning. So I mean, the two departments that came to mind were Board of Health and Police, just because they're both nuisances. So we just wanted to check in to see like what is the process for citizens and residents to try to make sure that this doesn't keep happening so they can get a good night rest and not be woken up so early. So I'm not sure if the chief or Sean, I see Sean is here, if there's any suggestions as to what can be done in order to keep this from happening. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Sean Gonsalves, Director of the Holyoke Board of Health. So I guess premise noise is regulated under Section 38 of city's municipal ordinances. It breaks down some specific types of noise. It also says here, any person who creates an unnecessary or unreasonable noise as described in this section shall be subject to a $100 fine for the first offense, $200 for the second offense, and $300 for a third and subsequent offense. And so that's how enforcement is escalated. I mean, normally when we get complaints, there's a letter that's sent first before any fines are issued so that there's clarity about what the complaint is and what the city would like addressed. At least that's how the health department does it. And what it defines for certain types of operations are a little different. So construction, demolition, or excavation says the erection including excavation, demolition, alteration, or repair of any building further than between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays is prohibited, whereas loading and unloading is between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So it really depends on the nature of the noise. There's a few things here, but there aren't in this section of noise set specific hours in general. It does say unreasonably loud audio equipment in motor vehicles. There's a section there that says between 11 and 7 a.m., but it depends on the nature of the complaint. So one of the ones we hear the most frequently, I would say, is trash companies tend to get a little too eager and they start too early in the morning, and that's the one we frequently hear, and that's regulated under Section 6 of Chapter 38, which is loading and unloading. Essentially, the best way to file a complaint is to call. You can call the health department, you can call the police department, and you can be as specific as possible. Let us know where, who's doing it, what specifically they're doing. Many times that can be handled through discussion or sending a letter. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time. With companies that do a lot of loading and unloading, like trash companies, oftentimes they have to narrow it down to specifically which driver is on which route, and that can take a little bit of time. I'm not specifically familiar with these complaints in Ward 1. If they have been made, they weren't made recently that got to our office, so I can't speak on that. But if whomever it is, any resident, or if the counselors have specifics, if you can send them to the office, we can look into those, and they're pretty straightforward to handle.
Thank you, Sean. So just to be clear, they should just be contacting the Board of Health, leaving a message, or reaching out to the police department, ideally the non-emergency line. The two businesses that came to mind were Sullivan Scrap and then American Environmental. They're really right in the neighborhood. So those are the two that we've gotten some complaints about. Councilor Rivera, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, she gets the bulk of the complaints. So I wish she was here so she can explain a little bit more. But yeah, 7 a.m. is still kind of early, but 5:30 a.m. is definitely way, way too early. So, and that's, I've gotten videos from these businesses operating as early as 5 a.m. sometimes. So I will make sure that they, keep calling, I guess. And I guess we can either have a log or something, and next counselors can put in some sort of order to see, what kind of complaints are happening around these type of businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Maldonado-Velez. Any questions from committee members? Anybody else? So for me, real quick, so when there is any loud complaints or loud noise complaints or anything like that, they go to public safety, or do they go to police, or do they go to both?
Technically, according to the ordinance, they go to the police. But the health department, for reasons that have to do with state law, also handle noise complaints. So essentially, city ordinance, if you look in section 1 of city ordinance, chapter 1, it goes through all of the chapters and who the enforcing agent is. And in that section, 3872 doesn't list anyone, which means it defaults to the police. But under state law, there are sections of the DEP's regulations that local boards of health are able to enforce, and that includes like air and noise pollution, certain types of complaints there. So it's split. We both handle them, and we have a code enforcement officer from the police department in the health department because there are so many overlapping types of complaints or enforcement. So really, if it goes to the police, it may trickle into the Board of Health. If it comes to Board of Health, it may trickle to the code enforcement officer, who's a police officer in uniform. So yeah, either way.
Okay. So Chief, and feel free to chime in too. So real quick, so if I make a noise complaint and I make a noise complaint on a particular business or whatever, how does that work? The police go over with the code enforcement officer, or do they go in with a whole team of officers? How do they approach this particular situation with a noise complaint, right? And then the other piece is how are we measuring the noise complaints, or with regards to decibels? Like, do we have the efficient equipment to measure that? Yeah, feel free to come. Because it'd be kind of weird to give tickets and not be able to prove in court that you actually have like violated.
So yes, the answer is yes, we do have equipment for that. We also, the ordinance is clear that, if you're 100 feet out and you can hear it, it's presumed too loud, and we can enforce that as well. So as far as us getting complaints, typically they're called in. I think Sean's talking about if we get something during the daytime, that's usually we try to push it over to our code enforcement officer because we know he's working with the Board of Health. But typically a lot of these, as I think someone mentioned 5 a.m., or that would obviously come right into the police department. We would send a cruiser down and they would check it out. I wasn't sure exactly what locations we were talking about, so I don't have specifics on locations, but I sort of had a guy pull real quick. This past year, there was about 47 loud noise complaints in Ward 1, and so it broke down to 20 were unfounded and 27 there was some form of police action taken. So that's typically how we handle them.
So an officer will show up with possibly a code. It depends on time of day, right? So officers show up, probably just tell them turn the music down, or if it's a multiple offense type thing, you give them a ticket or whatnot, right?
Right. It would be at the discretion of the officer, and just, it's hard to say. There's different, I think we're talking about different things here, like machinery, as opposed to, say, like loud music or, a loud party. Those all fall under the ordinance. So
right.
It just would depend on what the call was. But yes, the officer will show up, if it's, the dispatch would be able to tell them, there's been, 5 calls here, there's been no calls here.
And then they show up with the
Sometimes the
meter thing to
they
measure.
do if they have them. If they're, I'm not sure exactly how many we have. I don't know if we have enough to put one in every car, but we definitely have them on to access to use them.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't have any other questions. Do you have any questions, Coco?
No, they're all in.
And you guys all set over here? All set. Thank you. I appreciate your time. I entertain a motion that the order is complied with.
So motion that item 1 is complied with.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Motion to take up to item 2.
Item 2, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 2 was filed by Counselor Jourdain and Counselor VACON. I do not see either of them present. This order reads that the police chief provide an updated list of all tickets issued in calendar year 2023, including violation reason, number of violations, and a disposition. So because they're not here, I feel like tabling it, but I still, because you're here, I want you, and you have the information.
I did send it over.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he passed it out. I think I actually sent 22 and 23.
Yeah.
Just to
So maybe we could just table this for a time that they're present so they could ask their questions or whatnot. All right.
So motion to table item 2.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Is there anything else for the police chief?
There's a couple of things for the police chief. I think I entertain a motion to take up item 6.
Okay. Motion to take up item 6.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 6 was filed by Counselor Israel Rivera that the City Council invite representatives of the Sheriff's Department into public safety to present recidivism and release data specifically to Holyoke. You may come forward. Feel free to take any seat in the house. There's a lot of them. You just press the little green button, the light turns on, just in case you're not familiar with it. There you go. Introduce, and then name, address, and a title.
Okay, hi. Good evening. I'm Sally Johnson Van Wright, and I'm an assistant superintendent and the head of research for the Hampden County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure.
So you're going to speak on some of the research that has been presented or that has come out of the Sheriff's Department office around recidivism and releases, particular to the city of Holyoke.
Yes, I'm going to tell you what I brought, and I'm also will stay for the meeting and listen. If there's additional data, we can also go back and pull more stuff. I did also bring brochures and a handout that I don't know if Jeffrey is
I like trinkets.
Here.
Let me see. I'm
Okay.
here. I'm ready.
So Jeffrey has an electronic copy of these two, and the brochures. And I have plenty, so I can get the audience over here. Yes. So I will hit some highlights, and these were, frankly, just our best estimation of what the city council might be interested in, and if there are other data points that you'd like for us to track down, we're more than happy to do that. I appreciate your invitation, Chair, as well as the conversations that we have had over the phone, and it's great to see you here in your official capacity.
Thank you.
One of the questions I thought might be most interesting to this group would be how many people today are in the custody of Hampden County Sheriff's Office who list Holyoke as their home address? And the answer to that is 32 men and 3 women who are sentenced, 61 men and 3 women who are pretrial. RLU stands for regional lockup. That's a very fast turnover population. I was just saying to the chief that we have had 180 so far in this calendar year. They stay typically 0.9 of 1 day. They're very fast turnover. So today, and it's not unusual, there is 2 men and no women. That number would be very low. And so overall, at this moment in time, or when the count sheet was brought out today, it was 101 people from Holyoke at this particular time. When we look at releases, we're able to look at those in terms of what court. No, wait, that's still addresses. So releases is an annualized figure, and there the numbers broken down on the sheet by the various kinds of sort of status and custody are 367 men and 46 women. So that was for the calendar year of 2022. We do have available on our website, and I have maybe one more copy with me, a full release report, which I think, Chair, you have taken a look at. So that breaks down in various ways what are the ages, the genders, the reason for the criminal complaint that they're either held on or sentenced on, etc. Additionally, we thought you might be interested in how many people were released who were pretrial and their matter was in the Holyoke District Court. So last calendar year of 2022, that was 308 from Holyoke District Court. Of course, if a matter is more serious and gets bound over to the Superior Court, in Hampden Superior Court, some of those, not all, will be from Holyoke, and that number was 241 releases over the 12 months. For the sentenced persons, we had a fairly small number of sentenced releases overall. We have not normalized after the pandemic. The sentence population went way down as the courts slowed down. But there were just 69 from Holyoke last year. And so I'm going to get to recidivism in a few moments, but that's going to be a more generalized figure because when your sample gets that small, the percentages won't be meaningful to you anymore. When you have 69 released from Holyoke, we're going to have to just zoom the camera out a little bit and look at it from the county perspective. The other question I think is a matter of public interest is how long are folks staying? The pretrial people, and if you were to go and visit the facility or visit a loved one in the facility, you'll see that's a person in an orange uniform. The length of stay for a pretrial is 37 days to 54 days, depending on what kind of release. You could get bailed, you could get released at court, you could get fine ordered paid, or you could get released by video court. So the majority are in Ludlow or Chicopee, depending on where folks are, just under 3 weeks. So the median is 23 or 29 days, depending on how the release is. So that's a fairly fast turnover. And by the way, there are processes for handling folks who arrive at our facilities who are transgender. We list the numbers wherever they chose to reside. So if I land at Ludlow and my court docket says I'm male, but I tell you I'm female, we have a conversation with you. We have a process about that. And if I say I'm a woman and if that is the best place for me to be, then I will be in Chicopee. We don't track those numbers separately. We handle the individual situations. So that's where transgender folks are. It's not a large percentage of our population. We probably have 8 to 10 transgender women in Chicopee right now, and maybe one transgender man in Ludlow in the men's facility. So the length of stay.
Real quick, Sally, though.
Yes.
In all the numbers, this is only Hampden County, right? It's not incorporating state releases too?
Good question. These are county releases, yes.
Okay.
And we have right now, I think 45 is the number of state people who are serving time in our county facility. We find that it's very helpful for people to step down and return to home community before they leave.
It worked perfectly fine for me. It's actually a good setting stone to move to the next spot because it provides you the resources kind of in a setting where it's closer to home.
Exactly. All reentry is local, and it has to be if we're doing really good public safety. So we really work hard with the DOC to get people step down.
I just wanted to understand, because if this is just a piece of it, right? If we're saying there's 308 releases from Holyoke District Court and then Hampden County 241, that's just local here, not counting state people that are coming home, and that's a whole different number that could be incorporated.
A slightly higher number. So the Senate, so those first two are both pretrial releases, and then for sentence releases, so if a person got sentenced, went upstate, and then came back down here, that would be, I want to say from Holyoke, these are Holyoke releases, not just Hampden. That 69 probably goes up by about 5 or fewer. Okay. And that pathway is really important, as you point out, because reentry is local. Perfect. Great questions.
Thank you.
I kind of talk fast and I love data. So are there other questions for what I've said?
Just real quick, we could take a pause and ask any questions real quick, because there was a lot in that quick second.
Okay,
right.
Good.
Thank you.
That's my goal, is to make the data make sense.
That's the idea.
Yeah. So the length of stay for county sentences differs very greatly for women versus men. Our average last year, and this again is a little lower since the pandemic, we don't know if that's a trend where sentences are getting shorter, or there were lots of things that affected the way the courts process folks, but at any rate, last calendar year, we were looking at men with a length of stay, sentence men, or a green uniform if you were there. Sentence men length of stay was 8 months for the men, 4.5 months for the women. So the men are a good 10-15% more likely to be serving time on a violent charge. That could explain the differential there. Probably a whole study involved in that, but at any rate, looking at just what happened, sentence women are there for 4.5 months, sentence men are there for 8 months. So the way we see it, and relative to concerns that I know we have in common, reentry starts on day one. The moment you get booked, we start talking with the individual about where would you go, and if that's nowhere, what kinds of plans would you like to talk with us about if you don't have a good place to go, or if you have second thoughts about staying at a place which is actually either not your most healthy environment, or couch surfing, it's not really secure, that sort of thing. Do you need residential treatment afterwards? All those kinds of things get sorted out. So reentry starts at day one and it has to intensify as the person nears release. So I think that concludes the part of my comments that let you know who do we have from Holyoke, and how long are they there. So I'll just offer if there were any other questions about that. And we are, my email is on these documents as well. We welcome your questions. We welcome you go to the website. I'm very happy to say that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts now has what is the most robust information system for incarcerated persons in the country. It just has been launched within the last year. So you could go tonight to mass.gov and then put in keywords cross-tracking. Mass.gov cross-tracking. You could then see how many people were admitted, how many people were released. Each of the 14 counties, there are 13 custodial counties, and the 14th county, I believe Nantucket, gives their people for custodial purposes to another county, and the DOC. So you could compare it county to county, all counties versus DOC, et cetera. You can then go through and screen to say, what is the picture by gender, by race, by age, all those sorts of things. And recidivism is now up, and as of, what is today, Wednesday, 2 days from now, on the 1st of December, the programs data will be up. So you can see how many people in Hampden County or Norfolk County got anger group or Catholic Mass or high-set testing or those sorts of things. Very exciting stuff, and that's from the Criminal Justice Act of 2018, but the state contract went to Google, and then some companies are building that, and we're giving them lots and lots and lots of hours and time to help them figure out and make sure that when the data is consumed, it actually matches what we're seeing in our facilities, myself and all the 14 counties. So recidivism, I won't try to go into all the details about recidivism, but I would be happy to talk with anybody at any time till midnight about recidivism. It's really important. We do not want jails and prisons in the state of Massachusetts to be turnstiles or revolving doors. We do know that there are folks who will take more than one commitment, more than one detainment in order to resolve the issues that were underlying their criminal behavior. We want the criminal behavior to go away. But what we do know is that we can measure based on sentenced releases how often are people coming back. And we measure that since the Criminal Justice Reform Act at points 1 year post-release, 2 years post-release, and 3 years post-release. Now, if I'm a sentenced person and I'm released from a county or a DOC facility, you can track people like me. You can't find my name, but you can track people like me at those points 1, 2, and 3 years for 3 recidivistic events. And I'll just explain, if it was me, what it might look like. I finish my sentence, I go back out into the community. That means I am a release to community. When I am a release to community, I might then get rearraigned on a charge. Maybe it was me, maybe it wasn't me. If it was me, maybe I'm found guilty, maybe I'm found not guilty. That would be reconviction, the second recidivistic event. So we've got rearraignment, reconviction, and then if I am convicted, I might get a sentence, I might get community service since Sally goes to your probation officer, or I might have to go to Chicopee or Ludlow for whatever specified period of time until either I wrap my sentence, earn my good time, or get back out on parole. So with those 3 recidivistic events, for us at the sheriff's office, and I think the DOC sees it similarly, we monitor all of those. So that's why recidivism is a conversation all the way till midnight. But the most important feature, because it's most disruptive to families, disruptive to individuals, it might put me at risk of losing my job or losing my housing, and it takes me out of sort of state of play with my family. I can't be that mom, that dad, that uncle that's taking care of loved ones older and younger. That's reincarceration. So we pay attention to all of them, and we call the jail report card is reincarceration. So what is the Hampden County reincarceration? And again, this includes Holyoke, but because the Holyoke numbers are too small, a given set of individuals might skew the whole thing and you wouldn't get a good picture. So of all Hampden County releases, in 1 year, 13.4% are reincarcerated. That means I've been arraigned, convicted, and sentenced on a charge. In 2 years, 16.6%. So you can see that that first year out is really important. Most recidivistic events begin to happen within the first year, and in fact, within the first 8 months. That's why we feel reentry is so important. And then there's a little one more bump that happens. So most folks who make it through year 1 and year 2 also make it through year 3 and do not come back. But for those who don't, that is 22.2%. If you look at all the counties, that number is 33.4%. So a way to look at it is that about 1 in 4 people in Hamden County are back in custody on a new sentence charge, about 1 in 4 in a 3-year period. And it's 1 in 3 across the state. So we always want to get better, and yet we know that we must be doing something right, because our numbers, by every measure, whether it's arraignment, reconviction, reincarceration, Hamden County beats the all-county average in every way and at each point of time. So that's what I can tell you about recidivism. And again, I love data. I could talk for a long time and maybe too fast. Happy to have questions about recidivism, because these are people's lives. We want to know that the numbers are standing in for people's real events. And if there are inquiries that you would like my team to make, we at Hamden County, we're a whole department. It's a department of 3, but all 3 of us do nothing but research all day long.
So I want to say thank you, and then open it up to any questions for first Councilor Givner, if anything, and then anyone else that's on the council. Looks like there aren't. Okay, Councilor Givner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Sally, for coming in. I feel like we've met once or twice before.
We have exercised together.
Oh, wow.
It's good to see you, Coco.
Nice to see you.
Small world, man.
So as far as the order and asking about the kind of services offered to those coming back into the community, could you touch on that as, like what do people come back to and what is helping keep them out once they're out?
Thank you. It's a great question. And as I mentioned, the reentry planning has got to start at day 1. When a sentence person gets within, I think it's about 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how full that pod or housing unit is, they are going to move to a unit called a reentry unit. And there we have agencies coming in from the outside on a regular basis and our reentry team. There's an agency folks might have heard of called AISS. Right before coming to research, I was the head of AISS. So it was hard to leave it because it's a really special place. It's in Springfield, but our team, there's maybe 8 or 10 cars. So our team of case managers travel all over the place, and on any given day, you've got a reentry person from AISS in this city serving someone. So on the day of release, what we hope and aim to have happened is that you already connected with perhaps your behavioral health counselor, maybe a mentor from our volunteer mentorship program. We've got a job search team and the Regional Employment Board. I'm sure y'all know Ramona Reno. She's a rock star. Her team has been making contact with folks. We're very closely allied with ROCA. All the different pieces and parts that are very individualized are laid out in a plan before the person leaves. So the idea is that the person then goes out and makes potentially a better set of connections for pro-social living than they had before they left. The reality is that many people say they're going to do this, and then humans being as we are, try it their own way. So we found at one point in time that 10 to 12 weeks tended to be the typical point of reconnection with AISS. So I talked with Rick Barron. When I was getting out, I told him I was going to go see him. I didn't show up, but now things aren't working. Now I'm going to connect with him. So there's a walk-in service that you go in or you call us up 5 days a week and you make that reconnection. That's what we hope happens. The piece that I should mention, and this is new-ish within the last maybe 4 years whenever we started medication-assisted treatment, but if I am an MOUD client, so I have medication for my opioid use disorder, I'm going out with my information in hand and that clinic and a confirmed appointment, and my last dose letter goes from medical in Ludlow or Chicopee to wherever my clinic is. So the next day you can't have people missing doses. So that has to be a very tightly controlled kind of continuity of care. Of course, we aim for that in other kinds of illnesses. If I have diabetes, I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing with my my medication, and we do make those appointments and connect them. But with the MOUD, you can't have people. It's very dangerous if people were to go out and they didn't have their medication. So.
Thank you. That was a great question too, Councilor Givner. I think for me, one of the reasons I filed this order is so that we can have a better understanding of how many people are impacted by this on an annual basis, right? And this is just for this particular set of numbers. You go back another 10, 15, 20 years, the numbers were probably a lot higher. So for me,
2 to 3 or 4 times as high.
Right.
Yeah.
So even that, look at that. So to me, that there's a huge population of ex-felons that are roaming the community. Not
right.
roaming, but like living within the community. And a place like AISS is a good place to start, right? And I'm thinking of ways to mimic something similar in Holyoke, so that way people don't have to necessarily travel to Springfield. That is a large disconnect for some people. I know that was for me. I didn't want to take 3 buses to go to AISS.
Yes.
That was part of the issue for me, and a lot of other people that I know in the community. So trying to get something similar in one office here in the city of Holyoke, that would be totally great. And that's part of the reasons why, presenting the numbers and showing how many people are impacted in the community. So that way, when it's asked, it's a justification for trying to improve public safety in the community in a preventative way.
Absolutely,
for me.
Chair. Hartford, Connecticut has done that. Boston, Massachusetts has done that right in their city halls.
Right,
so it makes a lot of sense, and I think those barriers to care are very important because the problem is if I go into the local bar, the person who will buy me a drink is still sitting there and will still buy me a drink. Or in my neighborhood, if there's a drug dealer and I don't think to go down the different way, they're going to offer me the first bag free. That's just how it works. And so we say that a support system, and sorry, Chief, it's an awful reality, but I know it doesn't surprise you. The way we see it is that the support system for the person getting themselves to jail is still intact.
Right.
So it's a race. We've got to get that positive support system put into place and have dialogue with the individual so that they'll make choices that bring them to where they want to be.
Right. Perfect. Another question.
And we'd love to help you with that center in Holyoke.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, do people ever choose to go back to different communities?
They do. It's more likely that folks actually return to their same zip code, but we have a conversation with them, and especially if their choice after a facility situation is a residential program. Those are often in different places, and often there's not enough in Western Mass. So our AISS team drives people all the way to Brockton or Roxbury or Worcester or wherever the bed is. So people do go elsewhere. Eventually, most folks tend to want to come back near home, but we don't try to influence where they're going. We just talk with them about how.
So is there a lower rate of recidivism for those who choose to go somewhere other than home if all the triggers are at home?
As a researcher, I have to say I don't know. And I'm glad you're asking.
Because, I feel like that the obvious thing would be to not go back to where you get into all the trouble that puts you where you continue to end up.
Yes, I think it makes complete sense. And you can kind of tell I'm a social worker through my career pathway. The conversations are that, yes, I want something different, but my 8th grader's graduation is coming up. Yes, I want something different, but my mom's is sick and I'm the best one taking care of her. Concerns that I think we could all appreciate. And again, everyone's self-determination is really important. They're going to make those choices. But if you keep on doing the same things you've always done, you're going to keep on getting what you've always got. That's true.
So thank you. I really appreciate you coming and sharing a lot of this information. It's very insightful for us, and I'm glad that it's recorded, so it'll be on YouTube. So for anybody that has missed it, we'll be able to pick some of this information up. Any other questions before? Oh, Councilor Murphy-Rombuletti.
Just really quick, you mentioned there's a city that has something within their city hall. What
Yes.
city was that?
Hartford, Connecticut, and Boston, Mass.
Okay.
Yeah, and both of those jurisdictions have come and visited AISS. It's on 736 State Street, and all of you are welcome to drop in tomorrow and go see what it
W.
looks
Johnson
like.
Center.
Lovely place. Yeah, it's the old W.W. Johnson Center, Johnson Life Center. But those two cities and places from all over the country have come to visit us, and so we, it's our mission to help more of these pop up in various places.
Cool. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
If there aren't any other questions, I'll entertain a motion to the order is complied with.
Motion that item 6 is complied with.
Second that motion. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you. You too.
I will also entertain a motion to take up item 5.
Okay. Motion to take up item 5.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5 was filed by Councilor Rivera. Order that the Holyoke Hub come into public safety and present any updates they may have on the work that they have been doing since the Hub's inception. With us, we have Rondé Allen and Eddie Case. You guys can come forward. They are representatives of the Hub. I believe we brought them in before a while ago when the Hub first started, almost 2 years ago now. Right, and it was just to present and pretty much talk about what the plans are and what they hope to do with the Hub. And now they actually have data and a variety of maybe a presentation, I believe, right? Or no, I'm not. Okay, just updates. So the video, as much as I want to share the video, I think they shared it via email. The thing is that this meeting is going to be pretty long, and to add a little bit extra time on top might. I mean, unless you're going to have the mayor and the chief here till like 11 o'clock. You want to see the video? Oh, it's 7 minutes. It's up to you. Okay, let's watch it. Yeah, you know what? Let's watch it. Hey, Jeff, can you put the video on?
Yeah, just give me a minute to get it set up.
There you go. It always gets its way, man. I'm not mad at it, though. Nah, this is great stuff, though.
Chairman, while he's bringing it up, we did bring some stats.
Yes.
So we have 2 packets here.
Gotcha.
The first packet is our first 40 situations that came to the table. The second packet is situation 41 through 60. So there should be enough for everyone. So what we've been using the data for is to really help us build the program. So we feel like it's a work in progress, even though we feel like it's going really well. Why I wanted folks to see the video, I want people in that 7-minute video, you get a great understanding as to what the Hub is. And the way the Chelsea video shows, that's exactly how we run our Hub. We don't do our Hub in person because it saves time. We can get a lot more done by doing it on Zoom, and it's effective on Zoom. So we actually hold our weekly meetings on Zoom. We came here when we first started and kicked off the program. So in April of 2022, we actually had our first situation. This Tuesday, we had our 68th situation. What the data will tell you is what the demographics are of the people that have actually come to the table. It's the video.
Will we be able to hear it? I don't think so. Hey, Jeff, just in case there's no sound.
I'm sorry, say that again?
There was no sound while it was playing.
Oh, all right. Let me start over. Sorry about that. I
No worries. Come
didn't
on,
realize I
man.
needed to actually unmute myself to have you hear it. Good?
No. Still no sound.
You can't hear that?
Nope. We can't hear it.
Oh. I can hear it here. I'm not sure why it's not working.
Maybe it's okay, I guess. We'll share it with anyone that wants it. We'll put it on the it's where would we put it on public record on the agenda, right? So that anyone can access it and click on it. So that way.
Yeah. I'll add it to the agenda packet on the website.
Yep, there you go. Perfect. So that way anybody can click on the link and just watch the video if they need to watch it. We're having technical difficulties right now. We're working on that though. But Ed, you can feel free to take the floor. I know you're good with filling in blank spaces and presenting, so do your thing.
Yeah, so what I was hoping to accomplish with the video is just to give folks an overview of what the hub is. I don't mind sharing a quick version of what the hub is. So we meet every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We meet on Zoom. We have anywhere from 20-something to 30 service providers, or sometimes a little over 30. They're on the meeting, and what we do is situations of acutely elevated risk. When we first started the Holyoke Hub, we actually wanted to do a youth hub, but we actually had Dan Cortez, who will be in that video that you're going to watch. He actually is the facilitator of the Chelsea Hub. He came up and helped us plan our last 6 months of planning before we kicked it off. And he really encouraged us to do the citywide model. We're glad we did the citywide model because we're getting people that are out there that are homeless, that are out there trying to collect money in the street, some of which are addicted to drugs. So we have had situations like that come to the table. But if you look at the data, you'll see that we've had a large percentage of people come to the table that are actually from the Holyoke Public Schools, which is really cool to us because we're getting the youth engaged. And Rondi could share a couple stories, certainly one that's really memorable for both of us of a situation. But the way it works is any agency can bring a situation to the table. So out of all the agencies that are involved in the hub, and I don't know, I think there's maybe 40 to 50 agencies. That's one data point that I wasn't even thinking about talking about, but maybe 40 to 50 different agencies. But I can tell you this, now that we have this data and we can see exactly what the risk factors are, what we've been doing over the last several months is getting, and even as late as today, we had a meeting with the Holyoke Health Center because they haven't been at the table, but now they're at the table. So what we've been utilizing the data to let us know exactly what the risk factors are to help us get the right agencies to the table. And even though we thought when we first started, we had enough of the right agencies, but because of the needs are so great in the community, a lot of the service providers and mental health providers, they have waiting lists. So they're at max capacity. So it's so important to have several service providers that have the same services. So we're building our team, and it's just really exciting. I mean, this Tuesday we had our 68th situation come to the table, and when you see 6 or 7 different agencies immediately engaging, so that's the biggest thing about the hub. The hub is where any agency can bring a situation to the table, but then all of us, when we get to that filter 4, and I know you haven't watched the video yet, and just for sake of time, I'm not going to go into the 4 different filters, but in filter 4, when we create a team of agencies that are going to work as a team to engage the families or individuals and get them connected to those services that each of those resource agencies have, and then you see everybody start to work, it's been really exciting. And we have seen so many different situations that have come to the table that were at inacutely elevated risk, and now they're doing much better. So I do want to give Rondi Allen an opportunity to share. Rondi and I were both part of a situation. I'll let him mention that.
Good evening, Council. Just as an introduction to who I am, I'm Rondi Allen. Professionally, I'm a social worker and director of Crosspoint Clinical Services. We're a clinical agency in 4 locations throughout the state. I'm also a Holyoke resident. I'm raising 3 teens here. I first got linked up with Eddie coaching in the Safe Neighborhood Basketball League and have been able to serve in some other developmental capacities. So I've been able to immediately recognize the value of this. I've worked working with at-risk youth a lot of my career, and on the prevention side, that this was really a tremendous model. So it's a rapid intervention model. It allows multiple service providers to respond to the same situation at the same time with follow-up. That's key, right? So it's not a referral being sent into a black hole. It's a team of people who meet together every week, and then the following week, the people that were on that filter 4, we ask, how did it go? Did that family get connected? Many of the situations that get referred as a youth from Holyoke Public Schools become family situations where, maybe the kid gets, in-school counselor, the parents get counseling, and whatever the needs are there. One particular situation that I think could illustrate this was a teenager referred from one of the local schools who had a full-blown mental health crisis in the school, needed to be restrained. Police were called, left in an ambulance. He disclosed that he had attempted suicide 2 days before this visible crisis. And the way that it works is they're presented demographically and based on risk factors. And then if we feel like there's enough risk factors, we make a disclosure of the identity of that individual to see if any of the people at the table recognize who we're working with. And with this particular young man, I had coached him in basketball, and so we both recognized him from the Safe Neighborhood Basketball League. And Holyoke Public Schools is involved, mental health was involved. I wasn't as a mental health provider for him, but for his parents. No, actually, we did make a referral to us. But Ed and I actually went and visited this young man, did a home visit, knocked on the door. He was asleep at, 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. The room smelled like he'd been indulging, and we pulled the sheet off his head, and we introduced ourselves and tell him why we're here, and we were able to have a great conversation with him and just instill a little bit of hope. And we were able to deploy some services differently in his school to get him the right special education support. We were able to get him individually and his mom some support. Clinically, we were able to get them into the Y, and then of course he re-engaged in the basketball league and was on our team again, and is doing much better right now. That's an example. But it might also be a pregnant prostituting mom presented by detectives, but people with acutely elevated risk, multiple needs being referred to and addressed at the same time with follow-up the next week. Situation 66, how did that go? Were we able to make contact?
Thank you. That's so. Before I, any other questions for the committee members first? Any questions? Yeah. Before I add, I guess what I would say before you go is just a little more context into the process. There are different levels, as mentioned by both Ed Case and Rondé, and if your situation gets selected, then you get the services provided. But that is not to say that the person that is referred that doesn't get selected does not get referral services, because they still get referral services. So to me, this is the point where these are preventative measures being taken to be able to prevent things from happening later on in the future, or possibly things spiraling out of control. If we can step in front of it and help out a situation when we can, this is the type of space and cohort and networking of people that come together, because it is a conglomerate. It's not just a group, it's a conglomerate of people that come together to try to provide these services. So just wanted to point that out with some context. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask, so the situations come to your attention through anyone on this call that is once a week, am I correct? Okay. And so it's at the discretion of those different people who take part in all these different organizations to say, hey, we have this high risk person that could use as many services as possible right now.
Yeah, so there's actually criteria. You got to answer 3 questions. So let me see if I remember the question. Is the person in acutely elevated risk of harm? And that's one of the questions. So if you're bringing a situation that's an adult, it's a little different than the youth. The youth model, what we agreed when we first started it was that if the Holyoke Public School has exhausted every resource they can and they're still in that acutely elevated risk with a student, we're not going to have to clear that regular hub because they're all going to be having a signed consent form from mom. So every youth that gets referred to the hub table actually has a signed consent from mom. So other folks have to reach this threshold of acutely elevated risk. So are they in that the likelihood of harm happening to them? Is it likely it's going to continue to happen? if the whole team of people that are on, if everybody's 100% in agreement, because it has to be 100%, and then are we crossing several service sectors? So if you answer yes to those 3 questions, and the whole team of people, if there's 30 folks on from different agencies, if nobody's objective and we agree, then we pick it up as an acutely elevated risk. At that point, what Rondi was talking about was our filter 3 is name recognition. I know I didn't go into it earlier what the 4 filters were. The first filter happens the day before or the week before, up to the week where you decide that you want to bring a situation to the table. You would have heard that in the video. The second filter is actually bringing up that situation. We go through the process of asking those 3 questions. And then the third filter is name recognition. So we want to ask the name, date of birth, and address so we can find out if any agencies are already engaged. Because if they are, we want them to be part of the Filter 4 team, particularly if they have had success with them in the past. But we want to build a stronger team to meet the needs of every risk factor that comes to the table. And then the Filter 4 team right after that is developed. So we've had Filter 4 teams that had 10 and 12 different agency representatives that had different services. Think about it, mental health, addiction, housing, unemployed. If it was a family situation that had a youth, it could have been truancy, it could have been social emotional issues with the youth, parent-child conflict. So you need a lot of different agencies that have services for, crossing all these different service sectors. So once you are at acutely elevated risk, you agree, then we take it. But the chairman made a great point. So if a situation is brought to the table and we don't feel like it's acutely elevated risk or it's not crossing several service sectors, it's just a homeless person that their only need they're saying is they need a house, they need a place to stay. What we'll do is get them connected to Wayfinders or the housing resources. So we won't turn anyone away that comes to the table, even if they're not picked up and given a situation number. We'll still engage and get them connected with all the agencies that are part of the team.
Yes, thank you. And I think that's one of the strengths of it, right? Where if we're referring people, and even if the person does not make it to the next level of the situations, it's a conglomerate, as I mentioned before, of services, 30, 40 agencies. Someone can step up and make sure that the referral gets to the right place. Any other questions over here on this side? No questions.
It might be worth noting that what Filter 4 means, I don't know if it was clear, is that these are services particular to the needs of that individual. So even though we have 30 types of agencies on the call, they may only need mental health, housing, substance use. The Filter 4 is a smaller working group around that individual based on the services that person needs.
Perfect. And I guess a question for me is how much does this cost, in a sense?
Yeah, so thank God for our Hampden County Sheriff, Sheriff Kochi, for allowing us to be able to drive this, and thank God for the agency leaders that allow their agency representatives to be part of this team, because we haven't had a dollar amount outside of agencies working for their departments and taking a look at what this model is like and coming together. So we haven't had to pay any outside people.
So for this service, it's pretty much not free, right? Because nothing is free, but it's an in-kind donation from a variety of different organizations that are coming together to be a part of a larger conglomerate.
Correct.
This is awesome. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you guys again for being here. I am on the council for the next 2 years, what I was going to say. So I'll probably follow the order again within the next 2 years, so that just to keep the conversation going, see how it is, see if it's growing, where the help could be need. You know what I'm saying? If there's help needed in any way, I can't give you money, but some people can. But right now, I'll entertain a motion that the order is complied with.
Motion that item 5 be complied with.
Second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
1 to 3.
Yeah, I would say 4 first, and then all the other ones together.
All right. Motion to take up item 4.
Second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 4 was a order filed by Israel Rivera, order that the mayor, public health department, and sheriff department, veteran services department come into public safety to converse about the possibility of developing a returning citizens department under the public health guise. So the idea for me behind filing this order kind of goes in line with some of the presenters that have come together today. There are a variety of services that can be provided out of one central office. If we were able to develop some form of returning citizens department, we'd be able to help a variety of different populations or demographics, for the lack of better terms, in the community of Holyoke, all through one department versus having to split it all up. So when I say returning citizens, I don't necessarily only mean formerly incarcerated. I'm also including people coming home from any mental health facility, someone that could be coming home from active duty, someone that's just coming back to Holyoke in general and just hasn't been in Holyoke for a long time and is probably homeless and is in need of some sort of service. An office like this doesn't necessarily have to provide every service, because we have a variety of nonprofits in the community that already provide these services. But the idea is to be able to give them that connection within that, and then have somewhat of a follow-up or a follow-through, similar to what the hub has in their situations, except that this is more focused on providing services, more case management services to people that are walking in and out through the doors. I understand that there's a certain capacity that we could do things, but I also understand that there's a variety of grants that we already get that can kind of intertwine and help this come to fruition. There are some grants, like I believe the Safe Neighborhood Grant. There's a couple other grants that are used on Ray Street, I believe, for the operation that's on Ray Street, that could actually help put a lot of these people together under one building to try to provide some of these services. So for me, it was trying to bring everyone together to try to have this conversation. It's unfortunate we don't have our former Veteran Services Department director anymore, but to have these conversations in the future with whomever assumes the role would be great too as well. So yeah, thank you. I'd like to hear from you guys, if anything.
Oh,
yeah.
I think it's a great idea. The closest I can, I mean, there's a number of initiatives that, and one that we're probably going to talk about in the Ezekiel plan that I think kind of moves in that direction. And I think that over time, as we implement, it's the community response division is what I'm calling it, that I think has that idea, but I see that evolving over time as we hire the appropriate staff that are going to take on these roles in that division. I see that because those very issues that you're talking about, those are the quality of life issues that people in our community are being impacted in neighborhoods one way or another, whether if it's a housing issue or a mental health issue, people coming out of, from whatever circumstance, the office, that they would go to a returning office. I see this community response division being the advocates that would work closely with the services and organizations and follow through to make sure that people are being connected. I feel like that I have to study this model and see if I'm on the same wavelength. But either way, I think that there's an intent in what we're going to talk about soon to kind of move in that direction, using available revenue sources that are in the pipeline to sustain it. And ideally, I think what's going to happen is once you put these people in those roles, it's going to evolve more ideas. It's going to grow to try to best tackle as possible needs of the community that are happening in neighborhoods as needed. We do have we're rich in services in our community. It's just, I think here at City Hall, and I know the mayor's office has been the de facto, along with Alicia's office, community development. And even in some level, we have a very proactive Board of Health director who've been putting their heads together, kind of being that and trying to, but here it's our good faith effort in trying to build some sort of model that helps strengthen our ability to respond to the needs of the community, whether if it's a landlord issue or someone returning back into the community and there's some sort of social determinant barrier that's not allowing them to live there and grow in our community. So it's a great idea. I'm open for it.
I think there's a version currently being built that I think we can mold in time. I guess is my best answer at the moment.
Okay, so and I do see where like a lot of the things with the community response stuff intersect, right? Because they're kind of the same people and they're the same demographic in a sense. The only thing for me is when you do a lot of how do you say it? When you try to do a lot of different things, you lose quality in doing one thing, right? So I think for me it's trying to focus on doing one thing so that way we can do that one really well, and then after that possibly trying to do all these other things. So like having the community responder or community response thing separate from an office where, and it doesn't have to be returning citizens, like you said, it could be a community response type thing, because ideally a lot of this, and as you just saw the hub, a lot of this is already kind of happening in Holyoke. It just needs to be harnessed. The power is kind of already there. We have the networks. Everyone's working together already. It's not like we have to bring everyone to the table. The table's already there. It's already set. We just have to kind of formalize it and put it under one particular department where people are literally focusing on doing this work. The hub is doing some of the work. The sheriff's department has been doing some of the work through AISS. Mass Hire does some of the work. CHD does some of the work. River Valley does some of the work. It's about getting all these people together in one room under one office to try to provide some of these services intentionally in a way where the city, we don't have to provide the full service, but if, just like when I came home from prison almost 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I didn't know where to go. I ended up going, fortunately, I met Ed Case while I was incarcerated, and he directed me to AISS, and then there was a variety of different things that I was able to move, but I'm different. Like, not everybody's like me. You can move in the ways that I've moved and have the connections that I've had in the past. So it's like being able to have that here in-house, that's something special for me. But I hear all the stuff.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, no, of course.
Because like when I think of someone return, like, what are you calling it? Returning, Office of Returning Citizen. So if someone coming out of jail into our community, that individual is facing barriers contributing to, it's the social determinants that, you know what I mean? So community response is community responding to help people navigate whatever the health impact is, the social determinant is. Now, you know, we got to start somewhere. You know, there's three positions that I'm right now proposing to fill these roles, and I think that in time, can we add a fourth? Can we add a fifth? To diversify the gap of what's not at that table, so that we can better, on the city side, help be proactive and facilitate the services that are out there in the community and making those connections. I know, like the hub, you know, I have 2 aides out of the mayor's office that are just filtering all these calls. So no one from the mayor's office is sitting at that hub tape. But this community response division will be, will be representing the mayor's office with relationships with the Board of Health, relationships with, you know, the work that's going on at PD, and other organizations out in the community, our building department, because depending on what the issue is that people are bringing to the office, if it's a landlord issue, you know, we got the liaison that can work with the appropriate department of the board to kind of, you know what I mean, like investigate the situation. If we can work with the landlord and solve the issue before it becomes it, like that's the point of the community response, to be proactive, and I would add that in there. Now, you know, at some, you know, we'll need the appropriate expert at the table, but I'm trying to get it off the ground. Once it's off the ground and in motion, like I said, I think it's going to evolve and grow, and as issues come forward, so that we can make sure that we're appropriately responding to the needs, including this very issue. So I think I see the city moving in that direction. We just got to get the ball rolling on it. But I love it. I like the idea. I agree with it. If we can get creative in how we get these the plan the community response plan off the ground and create our own version, because I know other communities
Right.
have their versions of what it is, and they started somewhere too. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I think the
is,
idea for me is, well, I mean, for some of us, not just me, it's just possibly, even if it's just beginning with some form of, I don't want to say committee because there's a million committees, but at least a group of people that are going to come and begin to have that conversation and begin to launch that and see what it looks like.
So, yep.
Go ahead.
So, like, that's why I want to bring in these. That's why I need these bodies, because now we're talking about, you know, putting together a committee of staff and trying to figure this out. And if I can get this response model off the ground where their goal is going to be, here's the greater vision, and that's your staff support that would facilitate the discussions at this committee level, if you want to include community members, city councilors, and I'm sure Board of Health is probably going to want to be at the table. But you know, I need that team to help facilitate that conversation, and their sole charge is going to be, you know, build this division the way that we envision it, and work with the committee, incorporate those ideas. So we need that technical support.
Yeah, no, I hear that piece too, but then there's also, like, I believe maybe reaching out to some partners to help us strategically build this out. Maybe some of the researchers at the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, some people through the MPA program at Westfield State. Some of their students are working on some of this stuff too. It would allow for some work to get done that not necessarily we can afford to kind of do right now on our own. Like a great start would be to map out a huge strategic plan where it's
we're moving in that direction. I think we're saying the same thing but differently.
Yes and no. Because the idea is that, yes, we are moving in that direction, but I don't see a bunch of researchers at the table or experts at the table around, like, I'm not, like, for lack of better terms, they just brought us the plan, and it's like none of us had any input in the plan. Nobody had conversation about the plan. The plan just came together and came to us, and we're supposed to just, like, vote on it and have conversations about a plan that technically should come together from all of us, right? So for me, in trying to build out some form of committee, it's so that, like, we filed an order on the community responder model almost 2 years ago. Had we been able to take that up a while ago and actually put a group together, some of these issues that are coming up now with the plan could have been mitigated a long time ago, because we would have been having those conversations for the past 2 years already.
So those conversations past 2 years have been happening. Maybe not directly with you or you, but, you know, folks and stakeholders have come to the table, had these discussions with me at the mayor's office and what they wanted to see, showed me the communities. Now, you know, every community is going to have a slightly modified version, because I think Holyoke's very unique than what might be happening in Amherst. But nevertheless, the plan in front of you is so that I can hire the bodies to help facilitate and grow it. So there's still an opportunity to have a conversation about what's needed, what we want to tackle, but we need the technical support. If you're going to be representing me out of the mayor's office and building a department or a division out of the mayor's office. So I do still think we're saying the same thing. To say that the last 2 years this was brought up and nothing was done and things were being talked about, I have to push back on that. I think that's false. Maybe to your point, you want a committee with you at the table and everybody talking about it.
Not necessarily me at the table, but I mean, this order come up, I think, where's it say? It come up like 4 different times and nobody's come to speak on it.
Well, again, like, there are, with the number of priorities that are going on in the city, like, and the appropriate time and opportunity and available funding, and, you know, there are a lot of variables involved that might have not happened as quick as people would like to see happen, but the ideas were acknowledged. Revenue sources have now become available. We didn't have opioid funding 2 years ago, and if the opioid funding wasn't available, that'd be tough. You're talking about taking roughly $500,000 and putting a whole department together. When there are other needs that have to be attended to, service gaps in departments that have been ignored for a very long time, other priorities that took place. But now we have a really, really unique opportunity to put our foot on the gas. But the ideas have been acknowledged. We're trying to get it off the ground. There's still opportunity to do what you want to do to the level you want to. I'm not saying that let's not do it, but I certainly want to put positions together that will bring in dedicated staff people to focus on doing exactly, like, building this. I don't think it'll start immediately because, like, for example, the tenant registry, like, they got to study that, understand it, but somebody's got to come in and do that. Like, I can't do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, I want to bring in the staff capacity to do exactly what you're doing, to facilitate and figure it out, create the structures, and build what it's going to look like within the parameters and the limits of what we can do. So, like, if you pass this plan, it doesn't mean, like, we're going to start doing tenant registries. Like, we got to hire these people, the job descriptions, and then once they're in here, they got to work with people to understand what that looks like, what it means, how do we do it. And so there's still opportunity we just need that staff capacity. Working directly with the sheriff's department, I mean, it'll be just them working directly with me, and that means I got to find time to go to these meetings and figure this out, and I don't have that time. I need a version of me, which is my community response team, going to those meetings, coming to public safety meetings, having these conversations with you so that they can incorporate those. You know what I mean? It can't be me because
no, of course not.
That's what I mean. I'm not trying to minimize. I'm just
that's
saying.
Part of the reasons why I said a committee or putting together a bunch of people to come together to help take off the burden and lift that up. But I want to recognize Sean. He's had his hand up for a while. Real quick, my bad.
That's okay. Look, I think the point that I wanted to bring to this is, if you look at the last two people who spoke, representatives from the sheriff's office, from Neighborhood Hub, I heard something twice that I think is really important, and I wanted to highlight is I heard social worker. Okay, so and you'll forgive me, I don't remember their names, and I know they just spoke, but that's not great with names. But the first woman who spoke from the sheriff's department, what did she say? She's a researcher. Her background is social work. And then the next gentleman who spoke, who was with Ed Case, what did he say his background is? Social work. And so for me, the key here is, at least with the position that I have presented to the mayor, and it is part of this plan, and you know, I'm not here to speak on that whole aspect, just this specific item that's on the agenda. If we can get someone like the homelessness and housing liaison that has been drafted and proposed, who is a social worker, to come in, we would have a subject matter expert in the building. And I think that's a building block. And to the mayor's point, and that would be a stepping stone. And while I agree with you that having one person or one group trying to do a lot of things means that their ability to do these things as well and as focused as they might starts to be diluted. That's the case with anything. Getting a social worker into the city who will have a background, have experience, have that education and training is going to go a long way to getting us better positioned to be able to respond. And this position isn't the only one that's been proposed over the last couple of years while I've been the director, that have been similar, where we want a more direct response, you want more focus. And I think the way that starts is to get someone in the city, anybody in the city that has a social work background, that has capacity to work on these things. So for instance, if it started with this homelessness and housing liaison, they can come in, they can start applying and managing grants, because, like, yes, they're going to have their work cut out for them, but they also don't have the static workload that many department heads already have built up, right? They're going to be a new position. They're going to be finding their way. They can start writing grants. They can start getting money flowing in. They can start in the job description that I created, that I proposed to the mayor. One of the things that Councilor Rivera, that you mentioned, and that is in the job description, is they're going to be the city's representative to focus and what's the word? Sort of condense some of the services that are already offered through nonprofits and private entities in the city and find a way to harness that to meet some of the city's goals as well. So that's going to these meetings. That's having high level, conversations and collaborations with the partners that are there. And that's working to find a way where how can we either amplify the work that you're doing, or how can we find a way to have that work serve the community in a more concentrated way. And so I really think, I think to both what the mayor is saying and what you're saying, Councilor Rivera, is that in order to start, we need subject matter experts. We need someone who's capable and trained to do that kind of research and to make those kind of connections and build that capacity. And that has to start somewhere. And so for me, from my perspective, the city needs to find a way to get a social worker in the building that's on city payroll. And then that's going to be the first step in building out more specific capacity in this general scope of work.
Thank you for that, Sean.
That's what I say. I think we're saying the same thing. It's just, I think we just got to get aligned. And the point I'm trying to make, and thank you, Sean, for reaffirming, is we got to build out the appropriate capacity so we could start building that. You know what I mean? So we can start coordinating and organizing. And it's not just putting some person off you got to have a specific skill set and knowledge, the social work component that can speak to and do the research and incorporate those ideas so that we can get our version, Holyoke's version of what we want, all of what we want that community response team to be doing. Anyways, I think we're on it.
Yeah. So you had a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to mention that I did notice a lot of things in the Ezekiel's plan that reflect many of the ideas that have come out of the council. Mm-hmm. So I do want to give a little nod to that, because there are things that we've discussed extensively on the council that were incorporated. So I see it as a holistic way to incorporate things that we've been talking about for a while now. So I do appreciate that. And I did want to ask if would an office for returning citizens, would that look anything like the all-inclusive support services?
That would be ideal.
And if so, would we want to use like that as a model? And would that also be in our city hall, or would that be like a separate?
In Springfield, there's one in Springfield.
There's an AISS in Springfield. So Springfield doesn't necessarily need an office of returning citizens because the sheriff's department already technically has one already stationed there. So ideally, if the sheriff's department can do something similar, not the sheriff's department, us in collaboration with the sheriff's department can do something on a smaller scale here, that would work perfully fine. It doesn't necessarily have to be a huge.
But the intention is the same.
But the intention
right?
is the same.
Okay.
And when you have that collaboration with AISS, they'll technically bring a lot of their people over here and actually do the work here. You just need to be able to show that you need the services at the end of the day. Yeah. So that's kind of the intention with bringing in Sally and talking with the Holyoke Hub, so that way we could see some of the preventative measures that are being taken already in different places and see how we can mimic it and create it here in Holyoke. Just like I said before, a lot of this work is already happening, some of it happening for free. So at the end of the day, it's trying to harness this power.
It's not free.
Well, I know it's not really free, but it's not coming out of our budget. It's not coming out of our budget at the end of the day. But if we did the in-kind donation, it'd inflate our budget. But at the end of the day, so like for me, it's highlighting some of these things so that we could show different practices and different ways of kind of combating different issues that we have in this community, in the city. There's a variety of different ways to do things, and doing things the same way we've always done it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to kind of work. So
yeah, I think that's a great idea. Any help we can get, obviously, we'll take. We'll certainly think outside the box and do what Holyoke always does. I mean, I think for a long time it's has been doing a lot of things the same way, but also we're much more progressive than so-called progressive communities, and also in a lot of ways we haven't been doing the same thing over and over. I think the magnitude of the issues happening in our community are so big that all of the good work everybody's doing barely scratches the surface. I wouldn't say it's not scratching the surface, but it's a little bit. But, we're talking about a community solving problems of the United States of America. And we don't smuggle drugs into our country. We don't create the gun laws. We don't create the housing issues. But I see a lot of people in different positions, whether if it's in City Hall or outside of City Hall with local nonprofits, all doing good work, but the magnitude of the quality of life issues, because Holyoke is a strong partner with taking care of vulnerable populations, we're having the challenge of trying to keep up with the level of vulnerability going on. Nevertheless, I think what I see evolving here, especially since day one, the ideas that the council has brought forward, ideas that the community has brought forward, is a city hall that is looking to think outside the box and how it proactively responds to issues. And so in this plan, I'm hoping that we can start there and continue to cultivate that so we can close some of these gaps that are going on as we try to fight these issues that are coming into our city that, that our community is dealing with. So, but I'd take it. We'd take any help we can get. I think it's a great idea. I'd be happy to find space somewhere for the sheriff if he wants to take over something and make sure that we hire the appropriate staff capacity representing the city to facilitate some of this and work with the people on the city's behalf and come to council meetings and have more discussions, go to committee meetings.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion that the orders comply with.
Motion that item 4 be complied with.
Second. All in favor?
Okay. Are we ready for
And then I'll entertain a motion to take up, I think it's 3.
the rest of them?
Yeah, the rest of them. 7,
3, 7, 9,
8,
10.
9, 10. So that way we
So a
just put all
motion
of
to
them aside.
take up items 3, 7, 8, 9, and 10 as a package.
Second. All in favor? Item 3 reads, filed by Councilors Rivera, that the City of Holyoke will form a working group focused on developing solutions to mitigate rampant ongoing issues of vagrancy on High Street. It has been recently brought to my attention that a bus shelter will be removed due to some of the ongoing issues. How many more shelters could possibly be removed before we mitigate issues? That's 3. What was it? 7. Order that the employees at the Holyoke Police Community Center come into public safety and present on the services offered, as well as any other projects they may be working on that is important for the community to be aware of. 8 is filed by MALDONADO-VELEZ, Rivera, and Givner. Order that an RFP be created to study a community responder model type program that is outside of the police department but works in collaboration with the department as one of the several contributing partners. And item 9 was filed by myself and Maldonado-Velez. Order that the mayor create and fund a public safety department, suggesting a beginning budget of $500,000. And then item 10 is Ezekiel's plan. So which part do you want to start with? We went over a lot of it, kind of. But I think let me allow Councilor Maldonado-Velez to speak on the orders that he filed, so that way we can get through there first, if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think this is I know the order around the RFP for the community responder model has been here for about a year. We've taken it up a couple times. And then the order around the $500,000 for public safety department, which was taken up last month and tabled as well. I know in the finance meeting, I think there were a lot of high emotions and whatnot. But I did bring up the fact that some of the things that were in Ezekiel's plan were brought up a year ago, were put in into the console when we first started. And I did hear the mayor's response as far as all the different issues that are going on, all the things that Holyoke is not a easy city to be a politician in or an elected official or even working because of all the different issues. So, I do appreciate the response, but I do hope that we do really look at these preventive measures and not have it sort of be like a how should I say this? The feeling that I got from the finance meeting was pretty much that Ezekiel's plan, it was sort of like and this is what I also got from other people telling me, that it was sort of like, hey, we can do this, but we actually can't sustain it because we just don't have the money for it or the funds for it, which then sort of made me sad because, you know, Ezekiel's plan, there are some good things in there, but if we can't sustain it, then what are we actually doing? So I think, you know, going back to these orders, that was pretty much the ask, you know, creating an RFP. Maybe an RFP is not the proper term. Maybe it's a committee, whatever it is. But, you know, before we start spending money on certain positions and whatnot, can we create a committee or a study to make sure that whatever we do put forward is something that is sustainable, that can last for years, that can be an office that is helping our community and providing those preventive measures. That's what I'll say for now. You know, with Ezekiel's plan, like I said, there are parts of it that I don't necessarily agree with as someone that, you know, it's not a fan of getting more police, but there are other parts of it that we have been asking for. To Councilor Givner's point, you know, things that we have been asking for. My hope is that this plan is not just, you know, the mayor mentioned shooting from the hip. It's not just something that we just put in paper just to make people feel better, but it's feel good for the moment, but it's actually something that we are working towards for our community, because people did appreciate it. I'll say that for now. Those are my initial thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Maldonado-Velez. Any responses?
Are we ready?
If you would like, sure.
So yeah, the plan is definitely not reactionary, and it's not a feel good. But I take full responsibility in not appropriately presenting this plan at the Finance Committee. I understand that my takeaway was there's a lot of confusion, a lot of assumptions. As far as the feeling of not being sustainable was mainly on the whole thing, or concern around additional policing. That's where that mainly came from. But there wasn't a waste of meeting because we heard you. A lot of good feedback and concern in that area, and we actually went back to the drawing table and said, hey, look, you know, it was intentional. I myself purposely asked that we separate this because I felt there was a lot of ambiguity and people not really understand. It's a great plan, and I failed at communicating to you on how it is a great plan, and we all got stuck on a lot of policing. And so great feedback, however, because we did take that, we listened, and we went back. But now I got a presentation. I'm hoping that we can go through it. Hopefully we can clarify this a little better, so that, you know, we can reach some level of consensus in what we're trying to accomplish. So I have a PowerPoint here. Can I just? All right.
This would be awesome.
I got a PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I don't have graphs though.
That's all right. You don't need no graphs, man. I'm just happy that police got a PowerPoint.
I got a PowerPoint. I just got to now share screen. No, I got it right here. Share screen. I'm on. All right. Can we see that?
See.
All right. File. How do I start from the beginning? Look at me.
You gotta listen to the E4All expert over there.
So for every member of the council, here and not here, I do appreciate you accepting the late file order and sending this back to committee for further discussion, because there is a lot here that I think it's worth understanding before we assume and make a decision to not do because we think or assume certain things that might not necessarily be entirely true, but have an opportunity to go over this. And as we go through this, we'll get to the point where, like, you know, let me not complicate it, because as far as the funding strategy is concerned and how we execute, we can talk about that during the funding stage. And I just want to make sure that whatever or however you're thinking when we go forward, that we can clarify as much as possible. This is just a, overview, right? We'll go over the vision, the outcomes we're trying to achieve. I do have Sean, the chief, as well as Lisa Ball, who have been really the core team internally in tackling all sorts of quality, from Flex Squad to property preservation, and other initiatives that have been going on to tackle the different infractions that are going on in our community that are contributing to quality of life concerns, and so forth. So you'll be hearing from them going over the strategies within their focus areas that you saw in the original plan that I had forwarded to you guys. But this is the overall vision. I try to, all the strategies that we'll go over and the things that we're trying to achieve, and this is the goal, right? This is the main vision that we want to accomplish. And how we get there, I think that there are I've observed different perspectives on how we improve the quality of life for all residents, visitors, ensuring safe and healthy atmosphere, restoring confidence and pride in our neighborhoods, culture of accountability citywide. There's been talk about how we use data so that we can streamline our limited resources to be specifically focused in tackling core issues. However, different versions that might exist, this plan kind of encompasses all of that to achieve this shared vision that we're trying to accomplish in the plan. The outcomes, to keep it vague: clean streets, safe neighborhoods, increase access to quality housing. What housing that is, when we talk about housing, it's a spectrum, right? From unhoused to low threshold to low income to workforce housing, affordable all the way to market rate, right? I think that in that spectrum, there's a series of shortages in each of those areas. Then you have people in housing that there's certain quality of life concerns going on. It could be a landlord issue. It could be a concern in their neighborhood around crime, whatever. But in this plan, the strategies we'll go over, also includes just accessibility to quality housing, period. As we go through, these are kind of the three pillars you're going to hear about. You'll hear about the strategies, the enforcement strategy, what the $1 million, where the investment is going, and then kind of that greater collaborative effort between the city and the community, between departments and all stakeholders, and how we're executing those collaborative efforts, working with these investments to achieve the enforcement, to achieve our vision, right? Kind of that ladder. With that, we'll begin with clean streets. I'm gonna now pass it over to Sean, who's gonna go over these different components, these three pillars, and what we're doing, what we're looking to invest in, and how we're connecting to achieve the vision.
So, hi. Some of the stuff, I would say most of this stuff is based out of the health department, or it's associated strongly with the health department and one or two other departments in the city. So the enforcement arm, Flex Squad, I think we've talked about that quite a bit, so I don't think I need to cover it too in-depth, but that continues to be an ongoing multi-department, non-complaint based enforcement program. We cover approved census blocks under census tracts, under the funding types that the federal funding that we have, and we do a lot of. It is enforcement, but what I'll say about it is that a lot of it is a notice is posted, and we work as much as possible with businesses and residents and property owners to get things cleaned up without having to lean heavily into fines. And posting things on the door, going door to door, means that the response is much faster, and we can start, building relationships with people in the neighborhood, helping people to understand what's expected. The next two, I think I'll condense into sort of one description. Housing Court Special Counsel is outside counsel that's currently being funded by the city to expand on the existing housing court capacity in the solicitor's office. So solicitor's office does a million things. One of the things they do is housing court, which is, it's time consuming, it's laborious, it's something that you really have to keep driving at the same property for a long time. And so in order to expand and elevate the amount of the volume of cases that we can bring to the housing court, the city has chosen to allocate some funding to bring in through the RFP process, two outside law firms who have been doing some really good work for the city in handling properties, a couple of which have actually come through council we've heard about, and we've been working with them to take care of this. The AG's receivership program, similar in the fact that there are resources available through the Attorney General's office where we are able to refer cases, and the Attorney General's office handles those cases on behalf of the city, and they work with the law department and the Board of Health. We do the sort of the groundwork, and then they take it to the courts on our behalf. So beneficial program, sort of expanding existing capacity and ability. Under the investment, Center for Community Progress Training is a yearly conference that happens around the country, specifically in communities that have dealt with abandoned buildings and blight. A variety of city employees have been to these trainings. It focuses on vacant properties in sort of a broad way where many different aspects and many different perspectives are presented, and you can pick different tracks. And so it's very informative. You learn a lot. You see how other communities succeed or fail. You hear about upcoming initiatives, and then they tend to focus a lot of that through different lenses. And the most recent lens in the last year's conference in Chicago was diversity and equity. So a lot of talking about how the work in this specific field of vacant buildings affects disadvantaged and underrepresented communities, and how it's important to be mindful of that, and sort of, work with the community and not against the community. And so those continue to go on, and we continue to send representatives. And I think, every year Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti is here, and she's been, and I think she can speak to how great those programs are. Additional health inspector is restoring a previously defunded inspector position. This isn't a new position. This is restoring the funding to a position. And I'm hoping to get that posted by the end of the calendar year. So next couple of weeks, that'll be up, and we can get that person in there. Another inspector means more capacity. That means faster responses to complaints. That means more cases are brought to these outside counsel and inside counsel. It just increases the workflow. The data integration project, I think, speaks to one of the areas in the plan that we talked about, which is the city's looking after its own properties. So we are working through the property preservation group, through the code enforcement meetings we have with the law department, through some other collaborations we have in the city to really try to better understand and refine the way that information passes through departments and to whom and how it's accessible, because people change, there's turnover, there's promotions, there's reassignments, people are very busy, and we need to make sure that people are getting the information and that it's managed well and that it's accessible to the people who need it top to bottom. So we're working internally to strengthen some of the protocols we have about, new properties come into the city, how does that get communicated to the relevant departments, police, DPW, Board of Health, Fire Department, properties exit the city, how does that get communicated to the relevant departments? And then under Connect, the Appreciate Holyoke initiative is one that we're hoping to have funded through this initiative. That is a way that we are going to work with businesses, with property owners, to sort of strengthen the collaboration, have some of these local businesses that might already be doing the work sponsor some areas in Holyoke to sort of be a mentor, a big brother to properties and areas, and work with them to get some recognition for them. They'll take care of an area, sort of like an adopt an island, but this is going to be on a broader scale. And then also work to recognize the good work that property owners and residents and people in the city already do and model, say, hey, look at the great work that people are doing. How can we build on that and grow that and sort of strengthen the partnership between the city and residents? The Abutter Lot program, that is an initiative that's coming out of the solicitor's office, again, to expedite the transfer of tax takings, where you can easily dispose of properties by getting them into the hands of a neighboring. So if you have a property owner who is a neighbor who's already doing well, the Abutter Lot program is a way to get vacant lots into the hands of those so that they can essentially just build out the property they already have. It's an option, it's not mandatory, but it is one way to expedite some of the city's disposal of tax takings, especially problem lots. And then the Transformative District Initiative, I won't say I'm the most qualified person to speak about this, but there's an ongoing effort through the Economic Development Office working with TDI fellow Kevin Maforte from the state to expand and improve on some of the downtown areas. And he's worked collaboratively with a lot of offices and trying to take an approach to see how we can improve and really grow business downtown.
I put that in there and just quickly, just another example of, again, the connecting phase where you have the state that's working with downtown business owners, currently leveraging grant resources on the short term that'll help keep High Street clean in particular. We're talking about, trash cans and planters and a plan to keep up with downtown cleanliness, uplighting initiative, and so forth. Kind of that idea of changing the culture and the expectation we want to set downtown, considering that in the long term, roughly in about 4 years, there is this tip investment for all of High and Maple, full reconstruction of High and Maple street sidewalks, protected bike lanes, and so forth. And so we want to be ready for that change. We want, TDI to, they're working closely with this businesses, building on pride, doing what we can to hold each other accountable and improve the quality of life of what's there currently. And then when that transformation comes, that we're able to, continue to maintain that and build on that. So I just threw that in there. Lisa, was there any points you wanted to make in any of this before we continue? If you're still with us.
I'm still here.
So
I think Sean did a very nice job summarizing about the clean streets. The only thing I would add is, and Sean did say this, what we're dealing with in terms of, taking on these properties, it's incredibly time consuming, and there are so many properties that really need attention, and they have various levels of issues. They either, have code issues and need to go into housing court, or, there's issues with needing a receiver. Sometimes the issues are so severe that we have trouble getting a receiver. So, some of them are properties that we can handle very quickly, and some not so much. Some of them have been kicking around for a long time. So, as Sean had mentioned, we do have probably between 25 and 30 cases in housing court right now. Not all of it is in-house. We have at least half of that's with outside counsel that's being funded by ARPA right now. But we probably have, just as many that are kind of just waiting for us to have the time to give those attention as well. And I know that the mayor has put into this plan a request for some more outside counsel to help with that. And I think that's something that's going to be really important to keep us on task, because a lot of these properties that need the attention are downtown, and they're often, very large buildings. The Attorney General, which is really wonderful, is helping us. And they're starting out with, they've taken 3 cases to help us out. But they wanted to take only cases that were buildings that are not occupied. So they're a little easier to do, but we're just happy to have any help that we can get from anyone at this point. So I feel like at least in the last year, we're heading in the right direction in terms of getting these cases into housing court. But, as I said, we probably have twice as many that still need attention, and we're going to need, some allocation of funds to keep that going once we don't have the ARPA funds any longer.
So before I go to the next slide, and as far as what we're investing here in this slide, you're talking about education and training opportunities for staff to continue to understand the best practices and strategies to tackle issues around the properties here. You've already supported the hiring of the additional health inspector and the supplemental, which was included in the Ezekiel plan, and identified funding source was the raise and appropriation. So we appreciate that support for the Board of Health. And like Sean said, hopefully at the end of the calendar year, we can get that additional inspector. The Appreciate Holyoke initiative, it's going to fund, and the work that has already been started, to what you just heard Lisa from our legal department, we want to continue to support that. And big shout out to the AG's office who reviewed this plan and thought that it was great. And we had, I think, 2 meetings with her and her staff, one virtually, one she came in person. And, she's jumping onto this plan and helping out the best that she could through her office with some of that work. Safe neighborhoods, we'll pass it to the chief to take over on this one. Enforce, invest, connect, and I do want to share a little bit. We got Ed Casey also. We could talk about the community engagement component idea he has that we want to fund. So,
okay. So from the finance meeting, where we really revamped this plan was in the hiring of the new officers. We heard the concerns of the counselors and the ability to sustain if we were to attempt to hire 13 officers. So going back with the mayor and going back and forth and looking at a more solid number that we can sustain and that would still give us, head us in the right direction. I think when the mayor talks about this plan and how it, lack of a better word, is shooting from the hip a little, that we looked at more realistically at a number of 5 officers that the plan could initially sustain so that we could get those officers trained. So it's more about training. And then those officers would, so initially those 5 would be going to the academy in probably April or May, depends when the academy sets the date, either late April or very beginning of May. And those officers would be funded through the plan. 2 of those officers would immediately be absorbed through attrition with officers we have retiring in July. The other 3, then there would be enough money left from this initial allocation to bring those all the way through to the next fiscal year, with us also in a position in January to evaluate where we are as far as additional funding sources, which we are looking into to sustain those, but we'll be in a position in January, February timeframe to be able to, again, did we get the additional funding? Did we not? And then through attrition again, we would be able to absorb those other 3 officers through retirements or promotions, and that would allow us to at least maintain the force that we hope to have. We talk about it a lot that we are funded for 95 officers, yet we're constantly down in the 80s trying to get to that 95. I think this plan now is more of a focus on just making sure that we stay at 95 so that we can do a lot more things that the plan is asking us to do. With the hope, obviously there's a hope that we will find additional funding sources through grants, through outside help that will allow us to potentially add to our numbers. But if we can't, at least we have built into this plan the ability to sustain it at 95, a solid 95, which will allow us to do some of those extra things, the traffic bureau, the bike patrols. The other money that's being put aside here, the mayor, those are to kind of get us to pass this training part until we can get those officers in. So I think I hope that the council will see that, you know, we are taking into account the sustainability of that. We heard that loud and clear at the finance meeting. So the mayor and I went back to the drawing board, and we feel this is probably the biggest adjustment in the safety part of this. And I feel that it kind of gives us, for lack of a better word, a safety net, so that we don't find ourselves in a position that where we can't sustain it. Because through the attrition of, you know, in retirements, and we're gonna have at different points, probably in the fall, and then certainly in the early spring, of next year, we're gonna know what kind of funding sources we were able to get. And if we're not able to get them, or they're not sufficient enough for us to sustain, at least we'll be at 95. We'll be working at 95, not hoping to get to 95. So I think that's a really, it's not the big step that we initially had thought we would take, but I think it's a reasonable step to at least get us to 95, and then we'll have a good look at what that looks like. And if we can find additional funding like we talked about, great, we might be able to go higher. If we can't, then we won't, and we'll be at least very solid at 95 and able to sustain. Obviously, there's a larger sum of money the mayor put aside to do extra operations and get us through this next time frame when we don't have those resources. And then hopefully being at 95 and operating there, we'll be able to pick up the slack of some of that money going away. We hope to actually secure extra funding to sustain more of that. So I think this is a really good compromise after what the council kind of gave us that initial feedback. And I think it keeps us building in the right direction, and that's how I see it.
Chief, go over and that's great. You went over officer recruitment and training, so that addressed the big part of the conversation on the finance committee, the different enforcement strategies, the other investments, and then the connecting phase.
Well, obviously the bike and foot patrols, which is what everybody wants to see us do. The traffic division, I touched on those. The DA Gallooni is a good partner to us. He's always been a partner. So this was, you know, a conversation with him directly that I had that, you know, asked him for support. The mayor wanted to see more focus in Holyoke, specifically wanted to create a task force. Well, the task force was, you know, pretty much in place. And you spoke earlier of, you know, let's not reinvent the wheel if it's already happening. So what we want to do is add to that, and we're going to create a Holyoke division of the DA's task force, which will help us focus specifically on, you know.
So I got a couple questions, right? And I think one of them is around that, right? Because we already have a narcotics division in Holyoke, yes or no?
Yes.
So do they not already do this work?
Yes.
So that's where I'm confused, because the other day at the finance committee, it was said that we don't have funding to do this kind of work. So this is why we're asking for this work. So I was confused as to, like, so then what does the narcotics division do? Are they working in Holyoke, or are they working in a variety of different communities and collaborations with other people, where it's pulling our tax dollars in other communities where they're not able to do the work that they're supposed to do in Holyoke?
Yeah,
that's the confusion of where I'm having of, like, so the street task force, I understand that, and adding to it, but if we're adding to it, will they be specifically working in Holyoke, or will they be working amongst other communities also, yes, which will leave us in the same situation? So for us giving more funding to something that is not necessarily only working in Holyoke is, again, going back to the mayor's point, where we're a compassionate city and we give more than we necessarily get back. So this is the part where I'm trying to figure out, like, so what is the narcotics division doing now in Holyoke, particularly, right? Not collaboration-wise with different units.
Okay, so hopefully I can clear this all up for you, because I think there is a misconception that our officers that are assigned to task force spend more time out of the city than in the city. It's completely false. They do, the vast majority of the work they do is in the city. What the task force does is bring more resources to our city. through the DA's office, through
Okay,
the DEA,
I
through
hear
the
that.
FBI, through
I hear that,
these
but
other things.
I guess for me, the numbers don't tell that, though.
I believe they do. I can get you numbers.
That the crime rates are lowering?
I don't know about crime rates. You want to know? You want to see numbers? I can give you
I mean, that would be the idea. When you invest into fighting crime, it would be lowering crime rates.
Imagine if we get the crime analysts going, then we'll get those for you.
I mean, we can get that. I mean, I'm glad we're finally doing that.
I am too.
Years
Believe
into
me,
it,
I'm-
right?
I'm
It's
really
awesome
too.
because then we'll be able to have research that actually backs some of the things that are being said here, right? So, like, that's the thing for me. Like, when we're saying crime and that we're doing things differently, what are we basing it off of? Off of what?
Yeah, Chief, and
30 years of experience.
I got
So-
years of experience too, but I'm saying that like there has to be in other things that have to do similar to policing. But at the end of the day, where it comes down to it, our experience doesn't matter. What comes down to it is the data, the research. That's what matters, right? Because that's the world we live in. That's what funds grants. That's what funds our cities, and that's what proves to the taxpayers that our dollars are being spent in a way that makes sense.
And I think those will all come to fruition with the crime analyst position. We'll be able to produce those stats.
So the crime analyst position will be able to fight all the crime.
No, we'll be able to give you the stats
Okay, all right.
that you want.
So let's differentiate though to Izzy's, Councilor Rivera's point. And, I think this is an assumption, rumors that have been shared by a lot of people out in the community, Chief, and if you can just clarify. So we have a narcotics division and we participate in these regional task force. How, and yeah, they're working in the Holyoke office, but how much of that time, what's the value of participating in these regional task force versus not having these folks participate in these task force, redirecting their time solely in Holyoke?
Well, it's multifaceted. Number one, the task forces attacked the problem at a drug dealing doesn't happen just in Holyoke. Like, it's not like it stops at the border. So having those task force connections and the ability to go past the border is what really helps us combat the problem. What I'm saying to you is that the task force officers that are assigned, they use those resources that the task force provides them to help them with their job here in Holyoke.
All right, freeze there.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about in the plan, additional funding to create a Holyoke folk. How does that add value or increase the services that we need?
Your vision of what you had requested was to have someone that not just works on targeting drug operations, but working on reducing violent crime, looking at to prevent future crime, to take crimes that have happened and look at it in a deeper dive to say what's happened, what is potentially could happen going forward. Is it a group or a particular area that needs more focus that could potentially prevent the crimes? So I think that's the difference in those two task force models. Some of the task forces are designed to look at specific targets and then go and disrupt those targets by targeting them. Mm-hmm. This task force is more designed to, not exactly, but almost try to prevent the crimes from happening in the first place. If it's gun violence, if it's, when sometimes when the violence happens, it's one group attacking another group or back and forth, and this is a task force that uses many tools, which I won't go over here, but to try to intercept that ahead of time, to be proactive, to try to target those groups so that we can perhaps prevent future crime.
I don't, in my not many years of policing experience, I totally understand the purpose of the intersectional relationship between the partners. Drug dealing is not only in Holyoke; it is what is it called? Regional thing, and not just in this region. It goes across. I totally understand that, but there are agencies that are already doing that. In my understanding, like the CIA, FBI, ATF, there are a variety of different agencies. There's the state police already doing that. There are a variety of other funds. So we go back to a lot of the things, the rhetoric that I hear here is that as a city, we have to pay out of our pocket a variety of different things to help the state do a larger concept, right? And here I see it again where the city is giving a little more than they should with regards to doing inter-policing networking type of relationships, which makes sense. I don't disagree. I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense. I just think that it's not fair that it's on the Holyoke taxpayers' dime, right? That's the thing for me. That if when I was a kid, narcotics division was in Holyoke for the most part. It wasn't like the way it is now. It was a total different experience. You knew they were around. You knew who they were. And they policed the neighborhoods way differently than it is today. I don't want to go back to that day, I'll be honest with you, because I got a lot of traumatic experiences from those days. But at the same time, it wasn't like it the way it is today out in the streets. People weren't out blatantly doing the things that they're doing like they are today back then. So there's a couple different things with regards to the presence and knowing that the narcotics division is working mostly in Holyoke and how it impacts the drug dealers or the people doing any of the crime in Holyoke in general, knowing that their presence is here on a regular basis. That's one of the things for me in bringing up that. Then the other piece for me is the traffic division and bike foot patrol. That's awesome. That's there, right? So they will actually have the 5 officers dedicated to the traffic squad is the question for me. And then the other thing is, why can't they do both, right? Like instead of assigning someone to just be bike and foot patrol, why can't the traffic division actually do the bike and foot patrol? So that way you're not necessarily having to, you know what I'm saying?
You want people to do traffic on a bike?
Why not? There's tickets that you have to enforce. There's people parked in places they shouldn't be parked on High Street.
Oh yeah. I mean, go on the bike patrol. I thought you meant you wanted the traffic division to go out on a bike. I
don't see why. I don't see if there's 5 of them. I don't see why they can't interchange shifts.
Yeah,
right now it's winter time, so no. But like,
I don't have a my plan of a traffic division does not.
My lack of experience is making me feel like I'm a pro.
Division does not involve me saying you guys just do traffic and nothing else, because I think that is in today's policing. We're all multitasking. We're all doing more things. I think that I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
that goes back to the point that I said.
Patrol, they could do some traffic enforcement as well, and they will. I think that the traffic division will be more a division of our operations division as we build it, and then we will have set people doing traffic out of operations. That way, just as you're talking about, yeah, they're doing traffic, but if the need on that day is whatever it is, they're going to be able to do something else besides traffic. That might be a foot patrol. That might be what we're going to do, a foot patrol and some traffic combined. I agree with you on that. Yeah, we definitely want to be able to do that. I think saying, hey, we're going to take 5 guys and stick them in only traffic and only do traffic is a waste of resources. I think we need to multitask. I think we need to be able to do more.
I would agree to disagree in that point, because at the end of the day, if you have someone doing a little bit of everything, like I said earlier, they can't necessarily get one thing right per se, because they're trying to do a little bit of everything. So our traffic will lack because the extra officers that we put for traffic will be focused on doing whatever it is that you need for help for that day instead of the actual traffic that we assigned them to. Like we paid for traffic, right? So
let me give you a good example of that. Let's say we have traffic cars out there and there's a fire and we have to block a street. Well, we might take that traffic car and have us help block the street so that we can use our regular cars to continue to respond.
That makes sense. It's an emergency.
See what I mean? So we want to be able to.
That totally makes sense.
That's what I'm talking about. We want to be able to multitask them on the fly as we go, as things happen. Policing isn't so straight in like everything happens perfect every day.
No.
Everything goes crazy at times. It gets busy. You could have multiple. You could have traffic guys also doing accident calls as well, because they tend to,
That would be traffic.
traffic divisions, yeah, it is traffic, exactly. But, you know, when I think of traffic, I think of guys going out, you know, stopping cars, looking at speeding violations,
Yeah, that's a
things
piece
like
of
that.
it too, yeah.
But if there's accidents, they will start to respond to those, which also helps alleviate the line cars to continue.
So that's the idea for
that's
me.
the idea.
A lot of the issues that we have on High Street and on Main Street, if there's presence with a traffic squad that could possibly on bike or foot patrol or whatever it is, could mitigate a variety of those issues just based off of that alone.
And I
Absolutely.
think the
Just
plan
based
will
off of
get
that
us
alone.
there.
Absolutely.
I think the money that the mayor's putting forward is going to produce that. And I think that as we build capacity, we're going to be able to do it on our own
So-
without the mayor's adding it.
So the thing is, I'm not against the officers being put in place. It's just that for me is that like I still don't see a structure put in place that I can guarantee like that for me that like this is gonna happen, right? But hey, if it goes through, because who's to say that the funds don't be used in a different way later on? Because at the end of the day, it's not itemized in a way
and that's what I was talking about at the very beginning of the presentation, and the structure of the funding source. That's the special article, and we were going to go more over, talk a little bit about it today, but go over on Finance Committee.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a traditional expense budget that you're going to be scrutinizing and coming back and getting transferred. A special article revenue funds can allow us to give my office the flexibility to go and go forward with. And the strategies are the strategies. These are the things that I want to do. There might be more strategies, and there might be some strategies in there we might not, but we want to accomplish the task and the vision at large, but we'll have the flexibility. But either way, you know, yeah, it's not structured that way, so you can see line by line and how much and who's and where and why and what are their expenses, but more about like, all right, we know we're trying to get at the 95. There's all sorts of challenges that limit us to hit that 95. So, you know, there's some flexibility here in this funding source without having to, you know, wait until this fiscal year and that funding source will have it so he can further execute what we need to do to get the bodies here. And through attrition, those new positions will be absorbed. We're not adding more than what our budget can handle to address that concern about sustainability. But now, you know, the chief's able to cast his net much wider than what he isn't able to cast right now. So it kind of gives us that flexibility to go through that process and get closer. Because we're operating the high 88 or mid 80s or so, it limits the department's ability to do all these other things that people have been asking for. The bike and the traffic and so forth. And this DA Safe Street Task Force, you know, I added there. I wanted to make sure that I had a dedicated team doing the proactive things we needed that were not traffic focused or bike and foot focused, but instead, you know, tackling the issues, connecting the dots, and trying to get in to prevent things from going on, whatever the issue might be, is, you know, pretty much the grand scheme of that. The new crime analyst position, I thought there was shared support there. I guess we just got to make sure we get the position reflected in ordinance. I believe Kelly forwarded it today, so that you guys can send it to ordinance committee and hopefully it gets taken up. Upgrading an existing camera fleet, you supported that already. The identified funding source for that was capital stabilization. So
I think my only question for that is long-term maintenance and how we're approaching that. And then I think the other piece is the data. Who's saving the data? Who's storing it? And how much is that going to cost us?
I don't know much about that because I know the technology is different as far as that is concerned. But as far as long-term maintenance, no different than the city's never really had long-term maintenance plans for buildings and public parks and all that. And so we're just going to have to, you know, as we try to develop our capital improvement plan, we need to make sure that that's part of that, right? That we're not just putting it to your point, and that's been a downside from a lot of municipalities
that we've had for 30 years already that don't work now.
Right, and actually, and they have been working for a long time, but as technology evolved, they should have been changed at that time. But, you know, the city, as you are fully aware, for a decade plus, we haven't really been proactive with capital maintenance and so forth.
Will residents be able to access these cameras for, because I know in the past, like, I remember when I was younger, if someone crashed or something like that in the flats and there was a camera right there, some of the people would call to see who hit their car. They were told that they were not able to use the technology to be able to solve or find out who the person was that hit their car. So I'm wondering if that's something that residents will be able to use as a resource in case like somebody swipes your car, keeps going, or like someone broke into your home type of thing and you get to see the camera. Like, will that only be exclusive to the police department? Obviously it will, to see the actual camera, but I mean, like, if there's cases that come up where the residents could utilize some of this information to help them like figure their things out, will it be something that they get to utilize?
Yeah, any crime, you know, it would follow the regular path. I know that a lot of these systems, and I don't know this system, and I can get that answer for you. There's usually a, you know, like a play over time, like, you know, a week and then it's gone, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know that, but I will get that answer for you. And then, you know, if somebody, you know, comes out in the morning and their car's hit, like as you explained, certainly we would follow up on that. And the cameras are going to allow us to do that extra follow-up that right now, currently, we can't do because, I mean, we could try to look for private cameras, but you don't always get that.
So just to be clear, the ones that we have up, the white ones that were put up by Chief Scott a long time ago, none of them work?
4 out of 28 were working.
Okay.
So those are all being replaced, and we added 10 more to cover more.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for your time and all that stuff. And then with regards to the other piece with...
Yeah, so in the when you read the original document, I forwarded, I wanted, and I invited Ed because I think you saw content in there in the plan that read like neighborhood engagement and youth programming and services. And so obviously we brought Ed to the table when we were when we were thinking about what this comprehensive plan would look like. And obviously there's that, that component where you want to engage the community, take ownership of their neighborhoods, create leadership programs, things that you and I were involved with when we were kids. And then also the youth programming part that we're being creative. So I think I put in there, a number of 200,000, 50,000 of that was gonna go over to some ideas that Ed Case was cooking up as far as neighborhood engagement is concerned. So, and then the remaining,
I just want to go ahead.
Oh, the remaining 150, I was going to use in the form of, call it grants, but we have to put some sort of system together that solicits proposals from organizations like Enlace and Roca. Whatever the proposal is, that it's in line with achieving our vision, with how we engage our youth. So I know Enlace and Betty and Frank down there are trying to bring back the youth task force. And revive the youth commission. You got Roca that's really working with our most vulnerable youth, and I'm curious to hear from them how we can fund some sort of idea or strategy that helps engage them to create, to build, to continue to build on our vision. But the Safe Neighborhood Initiative and resident community engagement, I don't know,
Just real quick before Ed speaks,
Yeah.
I just want to say that Ed Case, obviously, everyone knows, is a huge partner to us. Sheriff Kochi is a huge contributor to us in all these programs that we do. I'm 100% behind what Ed's about to talk to you about, and I think it's really important piece of this plan that we are engaging the youth and everything that Ed does. I can't say enough about it. And the sheriff has just been a great partner always, and even more recently has stepped up even more. So I just wanted to get that out there. And as far as like the hub, we are a part of that as well too, through Ray Street. Our people are, and our community police officers, we're part of that as well. So they're a great partner. They're always going to be a great partner. They're great with stats too. But I hope we can get there too. But you know,
They got the sheriff's
just wanted to
department.
say that about them. You know, why I had a second before Ed goes on. I just want to.
Well, thank you for that.
I'm with him on this.
Yeah, so the mayor had mentioned about the 50,000. What we're looking to do is just get more engagement. So I feel terrible about our 5 coordinators that work outside of, like, I'm working down in South Holyoke. Since we started the pilot down in South Holyoke, I have enough resources coming into the Holyoke Safe Neighborhood Initiative where we can hold a family fun night. It's about building relationship with youth and families. I mean, we've been doing it every single month since 2012. Every single month we have a family fun night down at Morgan. It's community, you know what I mean? It's you're developing deep relationships. You're having people drop their guard. That's how you get people to get connected to resources that they need. They're not even going to share that with you until you have relationship with them. That's the work we're doing. So, like Miguel's here tonight, you know, he works up with Stephanie at Donahue and our other coordinators in addition to Miguel, and they don't have the resources. I can do a family fun night and have resources for $350 to $400 a month, but they don't have that. So this money is going to help us be able to do a lot more of that type work. But it's all about developing relationship, getting the people to come in. You have to put on venues in order to be able to develop relationships with people. I'll tell you, the family fun nights that we do monthly, like we're gearing up for this community dinner that's going to be next Saturday, right? It's a huge event. But to do that every month in a specific neighborhood, every month, it's just really cool stuff, and it's community building. I mean, we were just blown away at the November 17th Thanksgiving dinner where we all just were breaking bread with the community. But how many of them you know and how many know you? When the little girl comes through the line and says, "Mommy, does he remember me?" And then I can have a conversation with them and say, "Of course I remember. You guys come to Family Fun Night every month."
Right.
So what we're looking to do is just get more support to some of the other coordinators so they can consistently have those types of events in the other 5 neighborhoods. What Sheriff is allowing us 6 staff, well, really 6 neighborhoods. I take South Holyoke on, but those other 5. So Ward 1, Ward 3, Ward 4, Ward 5, Ward 6, working with the schools in those neighborhoods, they just need some resources to help them be able to put on these type of events to be able to engage families and take things to a new level. Even the basketball league. The basketball league, to me, it's just about getting, I mean, if you could, and you guys are all welcome to come visit the basketball league. We got 340 kids. On a Friday night, we're bringing in speakers every Friday. The mayor can tell you he coached the team. He heard the speakers coming in. They're not just talking to the kids, they're talking to the families, and it's community building stuff. It's really cool. But the best part about it is it's really exposing the kids to possibilities of what they can become. And that's what I love about having the speakers come in and talk to them as early as 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th grade about career opportunities. So that's what we're looking to do. Just take it to a new level.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm very familiar with the basketball league. I actually used to coach the basketball and I coached the baseball team the one time you did it. And the community dinner in the flats is near and dear to my heart, I guess I would say, right? Because one of the original organizers for that, myself, Priscilla, and rest in peace, Justin Chavez. We also held a Dad's Giving the other day, November 19th at Sullivan School. So the idea is that is great that we're expanding and we're trying to move into different communities to make sure the Flats and South Holyoke are 2 communities that are engaged within their local schools, and trying to bring that to other communities is awesome. I think the one piece for me is we need something for adults, for parents, for people that are past that stage, right? Because in reality, as much as we can work on, and this is something that I've noticed, is like you could work as much as you want on that youth, put in all the time and the effort and the work, but if they go home to something that is not putting the same narrative or putting the same effort forward, everything you've done could be undone. So it's like, for me, it's 3 facets in a kid's life. It's school, an after-school program, and their parents. So the after-school program is Holyoke Safe Neighborhood Initiative, there's school, and then there's parents. What are we doing for parents, in a sense, right, in the community overall? What are we doing to help the adults get connected into the resources that they need so that they can become holistic parents? I guess I don't want to say better because everyone is good in my mind, but at the end of the day, what pieces can we do to connect that? Because ROCA is a great program, but ROCA cuts off at 25. After 25, pretty much, then what do we do, right? What's going on? And we all know that after 25, recidivism rates start to increase a little more, because now you're almost, you are oh man, but our minds kind of develop a little longer. So at 30, right, now you're finding yourself. But by the time you're finding yourself, you already have a criminal record and you're going through a lot of different things, and it's a little too late to try to find yourself because society doesn't think it's cute anymore. So it's trying to connect those dots for me. I appreciate the work you've been doing. I appreciate a lot of the work that's coming out of a lot of the partners in the community. So I'm glad to see that that's here. The youth programming, a lot of the other stuff that was talked about too, for me too, is all pretty.
Yeah, and remember, like it's so, and we can elaborate more, and Rory's here on how the special article will work. But you know, I know in the chart it was 50,000, and then the remaining 150 youth pro. That can go up or down. Like, you know, to your point, catching that as great input. You know, how do we make sure that in our community engagement component of this plan, that we're spending monies that are engaging the people of that neighborhood, whether if it's adults, the young adults, at a level where it allows them to become the next leaders of that community. And obviously, these events are huge, right? Like, you know, there are things that people remember. It allows people to connect in a space and hang out with their neighbors and positive engagement. And so having that flexibility and that funding source to be able to pay those things, you know, it's tough because, you know, you leverage grants to do it, and there's different criteria you got to hit, and there's all these red tape and rules. Here, it's like, all right, in this Ezekiel plan, we're dedicating X amount. Let's divide this up and make sure, and it's just as simple as the sheriff's department sending us an invoice and then cutting that check, as long as they're hitting that plan. But how we do it to catch that audience, how we achieve our community engagement with adults and youth, you know, those are things that we need to work on, because that's what we want to do to achieve the vision. And the youth programming, you know, I do want to give an opportunity. You know, I follow a lot on what's happening in this community. I see Enlace really stepping up their game with what they're trying to do in their space. I've met with them multiple times in how badly they want to bring back the youth task force, which is a collaborative of all youth organizations, and trying to set something up there. And then obviously Roca works with a population of our youth, and we want to engage that population too, so they're not missed in this greater safety plan. So how we divide up that 200,000, you know, I just want, as long as we're hitting our targets and we're achieving the goal and the vision, then that's what we want to do. We're heading in the right direction. Thanks, Ed. Quality housing. I'll give this back to Sean and Lisa, if you guys are still on and haven't left us.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick this off, and Lisa, if you want to join in, please. So, public landlord registry. I think as this has been discussed a little as well.
Yeah, no problem.
The hope is that we can put ourselves in a position to maybe do some preventative maintenance on this. So the health department already does what's called an MRVP, which is a Massachusetts rental voucher program inspection. And so that's if you're using voucher programs to house tenants in your building, the health department goes out and does a pre-occupancy inspection. Any code violations are corrected, and then, you know, people are guaranteed to move into, you know, at that moment in time, code compliant housing. And so the hope is with this public landlord registry that we can get people who have 3 or more units registered, and then hopefully build capacity towards doing pre-occupancy and hopefully like exit inspections where we can possibly expedite code violations and compliance, so that people aren't moving into the units that have problems and those problems aren't allowed to persist. But getting there is understanding who you have and what you have for housing and rental units, and starting to work with them to build a line of communication and understanding. So that hopefully will start with this Office of Public Safety and some of the outreach they're able to do.
Sean.
The Chapter 139 notices, this kind of builds on this.
just really quickly, so that public landlord registry and the pre-rental inspections, that idea came out of the advocacy from neighbor to neighbor for wanting to create an office of tenant protection. And so just wanted, so you're following me here. So I'm talking about community response division. I'm just, again, absorbing that and making sure that who we hire are tackling that, right? That very idea that was being advocated for from the community, communicating with consultant Sean, and we all know Sean's great, very qualified, very smart guy, who just eloquently described just now, how we can make this work to support our shared goals of our departments between the Board of Health and other departments. That's some of the proactive things that have been being advocated for by the community that as a city we can do to better protect, to ensure quality housing and protect tenant rights. And it doesn't mean at all that we're going to go and create a war with landlords. Ideally, we want to be able to solve issues before they become issues. So it's working with landlords to address these issues ahead of time and kind of eliminate any discrepancies in between or missed opportunities. That's the idea behind that. But go ahead, Sean, Chapter 139 notices.
Yeah, so to Josh's point, the first two things are you want to work to build a system where maybe you can fix problems before they arise or persist. The Chapter 139 notice is the other side of the coin, where these are using state law. Chapter 139 is part of a Massachusetts law where you can declare buildings to be essentially a public nuisance. Now, these have come in front of the council before. I think they were referred to locally as the red letter, quote unquote. But this is a notice that the city would send as a collaborative effort between multiple departments to say that this property has become a nuisance and that it's a drain both to the community and on public resources. And we have used this in the past, though that practice has fallen off a little bit. So Rory had brought this to the city's attention recently as past practice, and I think there's an opportunity here for us to make good use of this moving forward. Under the invest, I had talked at length at a previous agenda item about the homelessness liaison and the housing navigator position. But the hope there is that you have someone in the community who can work with the homeless population that persists. Homelessness is not unique to Holyoke, but it certainly has an impact on this community that is more visible than in some other communities. And we're, police department, Board of Health, other departments, as we work to elevate the community, you have to address the needs of the most vulnerable populations. And I think having somebody who's qualified and knowledgeable can not only help to improve practices in existing departments, but then build out on the services that we're able to offer. And so I know that there was an individual agenda item that's been taken up as part of a package, and I really would point to this as a good first step in growing our efforts to address the homeless community downtown, both to meet their needs, but also to meet the needs of residents and citizens that are concerned about how it's impacting the neighborhoods. I think Josh can speak about the community response advocates and has, but the hope is that these folks are going to work in that same office with the homelessness liaison and housing navigator position to respond to community needs and help address and triage the needs of people that come in, and then also be someone who can go out into the community and meet people where they are, and bring back information and expand and work collectively with departments to meet those needs. But they'd be a first line of outreach working in the community. Josh, I don't know if you want to speak more on that.
Yeah, I think we've talked a little bit about at the very beginning on that. That's remember I told you I want 3 people as the housing navigator and then 2 social work experts. We didn't know what to call it, so we just put 2 community response advocates there for now on. And then the building new units of housing. That's the part in that plan, the chart that you saw where it said build more housing and then funding source TBD. That's more of the larger, like the what is the home ARP money and other home CDBG money that Alicia and our offices have been working to leverage to just build more low-income affordable housing units. We did recently open a 46-unit low-threshold house, so it's just doing more housing units in the city to address housing shortages, because that's, and again, at all levels, from sheltering to low threshold to market, all the way to market rate, affordable, low income, at all units of the spectrum. So that should continue to be all of our priorities, as it has been for the last, decades or so. We want to continue doing that. The connecting part, like I said, we want to include in this process to do some sort of landlord education, where we're inviting our property owners in and taking that proactive front to educate and make sure we're addressing those issues ahead of time before they become actual issues. There's that legal counsel for tenants that came out of the tenant protections. Having an outside counsel, a couple hours a week here, present at the mayor's office or wherever in here, where tenants can come in and get some free advice on issues that might be going on. And then, obviously we spoke about the community response division.
So if I may, real quick, about the legal counsel for tenants, right? How different would that be than community legal aid?
It'd be funding.
Could I speak to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Sure.
So what I will say is one, community legal aid is strapped. What we hear from a lot of people, so health department, we get a lot of these calls, and as part of what's now required by the updated version of the housing code, we are obligated to provide, we've done it all along, but it's been clarified in the updated housing code. We're obligated to provide a tenant's rights document to anybody that we do an inspection at. And on that tenant's rights document, it has the information for community legal aid. And the feedback that we are getting from people is that community legal aid, there's a long waiting list, or that they don't hear back. So I'm not going to say that it's totally different, but it would be a local, here in Holyoke, from the city opportunity to expand on that service, because I think, especially post-COVID, after the eviction moratorium was lifted, there is just an incredible backlog of evictions cases and unresolved housing cases that we still see traveling through the housing court. And so this legal counsel, one, is going to continue to try to meet that need as the state continues to work itself out of that bottleneck that was there. But then two, when we saw the need for this Office of Tenants Protection, we heard the request for this. I think one of the things that I've seen, I've been working in the health department for 9 years, is that a lot of the assistance that people need, that they are asking for, that I think falls under that tenant protection, is not something that, for instance, an inspector is in a position to provide. So people have questions about rent that we're just not really qualified or able to answer. People have questions about, evictions that we're not really supposed to be answering or providing as an inspector legal consultation about matters like that. And so having someone in-house where we can say, look, let us handle the brick and mortar side of things, but I'm going to transfer you in-house to somebody in the city that might be able to answer some of your questions, and then to be able to work collaboratively with that office is, I think, going to be a much more responsive and efficient workflow than referring them to an outside agency that we really don't have any lateral connection to. Community legal aid, I refer people to, but I get no feedback from them. We don't work with them directly.
And then, is this Leslie? Do I got one? Nope. Okay, sources is not the least then. Special article, we won't go too much into it, but we can go as much into it as you like. I think Rory can speak a little bit to this. We do plan on talking more about this at the Finance Committee, but just to, explain why we chose this direction. Rory, do you want to take the floor?
Yeah, and I think that really I can speak broadly on this. The auditor, Tanya, really should be the one to get into the mechanics of it. But what I will say, some of the themes that came up this evening, and certainly what we've discussed internally, is how can we, A, make sure that any money being appropriated, regardless of the funding source, is being tracked? What's the best way to track it? And rather than saying we've got, I mean, you know, this budget book, how many pages and how many budget lines, and we're going to put some money here, we're going to put some money there. And so we were looking at different options, and we reached out to the state, the Department of Local Services, and we reached out to our outside auditors to look at some different options. And they recommended this special article. And it accomplishes a few things. The first is it allows for that tracking, right? So the same way that grants operate now. So if you wanted to know if the councilor, the mayor, or the chief, or whomever wanted to know how many hours have actually been used towards this grant, you know, for staff time or overtime or capital expenses, whatever it is, we're not going to have to go through the budget and try to parse it all out. We're going to have all of that living within this special article. And then at the same time, you know, as the fiscal year cycle goes, I'm sure folks are familiar with revolving funds, some of the different mechanisms that exist that would allow for money that is unexpended at the end of the fiscal year, rather than it just going to free cash or, you know, then getting looped back into the general fund. How can we make sure, like a grant can last over a number of years, capital projects can last over a number of years, and so this allows for that, right? So taking the money that we have now, you know, whether it's ARPA revenue replacement, other sources that have been discussed, being able to say we're going to earmark it for this. It's going into this fund. It doesn't mean that it's a slush fund that can just be spent willy-nilly. There's still a lot of controls. But if that money isn't expended by June 30, it doesn't disappear, right? We can allow that to continue. So, you know, as an example, you know, the homeless liaison housing navigator, which is something, you know, Sean and I have been talking about since I was working in his office before my current role, as a need. And so we're very excited to see it finally, you know, getting its kind of due attention. That doesn't exist yet, right? There's job descriptions. We've had it reviewed. We kind of have a sense. We've looked at other communities. We've reached out to other communities that have similar positions. We've actually had some folks in the social work field review that job description. So we want to move forward with it. It doesn't exist yet, and we know that it's going to have to be created, whether it's negotiated in one of the collective bargaining units or Schedule A through ordinance. It doesn't exist yet. So we want to lock that money in. How are we going to make sure that it happens? By going through this special article, we can earmark that money now. And if it doesn't get created for a month, if it doesn't get created for 6 months, we know that that money's there. It's not going to disappear. And we have that money locked in. So that's why we went this route. And I know that, you know, there's going to be a deeper conversation on the funding piece on Monday, but I'm more than happy to address any questions that I can.
I don't have any questions on funding. I think that's for
Before questions.
finance.
And here are all the different funding sources that make up the plan, and the you know, the 1 million is a combination of ARPA revenue replacement. I didn't put the other one. We didn't put the other one there, and a revenue interest. We missed that one. We'll fix it. ARPA revenue replacement and revenue interest, and then obviously capital stabilization with the cameras, local appropriation. You got the you know, the inspector and so forth, but the million. And as far as sustainability is concerned, how do we sustain this when when these funding sources aren't available any longer? So, you know, again, that's when the opioid settlement money starts kicking in, and we start baking that into our budget. That will then sustain the 3 positions that we just were able to get off the ground using the $1 million strategy. You know. So it's really a flexibility revenue source that we're creating using this to do a lot of the things that we've been, talking about for a long time. And again, I want to, say again, this isn't a reactionary plan. This was, I apologize, I didn't really present this way the last time, but I'm hoping that you would agree that we've really thought about this comprehensively and how we approach the issues going on in the community. And a lot of this, again, has been ideas shared between here and between, meetings in my office with different organizations, and trying to understand what the issues are in our community. And so it's like, all right, well, how's the best way that we can do all of this while also at the same time looking at, and I think I was clear at the Finance Committee, the only thing that really wasn't really that I had agreed with, that we didn't really think out too much, was how do we sustain 13 new cops? And I think we talked about that even before coming in to the Finance Committee. And so again, we instead of 13 new cops, it's just flexibility to get to that 95, and all to, achieve the vision, achieve these outcomes that we're trying to accomplish: to clean streets, safe neighborhoods, and access to quality housing. So, any questions?
Any other questions? Okay. Tessa Murphy Marmoletti.
Well,
Or you're first? Oh, okay. Yep. Counselor Tessa Murphy Marmoletti.
thank you all for such a great, honestly, this has been really great, and I'm really glad that we're doing this, so thank you all.
Awesome.
But the one piece for me that's missing is just to know more about what your benchmarks are, right? Like what are the indicators of success? What does that look like? Obviously, the crime rate goes down. We go an entire year without a homicide. I don't know. But like when I grant write for my job, I have to present what my benchmarks are and what I'm going to be able to tell my funders, this is how I know what I'm doing is working or going in the right direction. So I guess, have you guys thought that piece out yet on what you hope the benchmarks are?
No. Not in a formal presentation. No. I mean, because, and it's like, can we potentially? And I see where you're going.
I mean, I guess I just, if it does work out well.
No, we want to know what the,
whether or not what's working out well and what should we keep funding and what do we need to work on or change or, so I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only two things, because, here in our vision, leverage limited resources through better use of data, obviously through what Sean talked about, and also, what we talked about with how we create a system that helps better evaluate data on what he presented, and then also the crime analyst stuff. I mean, there's certainly a lot of opportunity to have a deeper conversation when we build the infrastructure for that. And when we revisit these things, yeah, we do want to evaluate whether or not what we're doing is working. But that's not anything that I prepare for tonight.
Okay, I just wanted to,
But it's a really good.
And I think if I could, I think that what's really important to take away from this is that the funding piece, and I know we're talking about the plan, right? Because there's the plan and then there's the funding. And then, what is the plan going to actually produce? And is it worth it to keep funding it? To a grant, right? If you want to get more funding, you want to get, more information, you want to be able to prove to the community and prove to your funders that it's a worthwhile cause. And I think that I think if we went around the room, the mayor's point about it's not laid out specifically in this presentation, we're meeting constantly. I mean, the property preservation group was mentioned as an example. A lot of the things that really excite me in this plan speak to the clean streets, speak to the quality housing, speak to ways to reduce crime that are not just through traditional policing methods, right? And so those conversations are taking place. The way we want to utilize data to ensure that we are making informed decisions are exactly what this funding will allow for us to build, right? So do we know what those benchmarks are? Not necessarily. We could say, yeah, reduce crime or clean streets or, less tickets, more tickets, depending on how you want to look at it. But what's really important is that, again, on the funding side of it, by setting it up this way, there is a very clean and easy way to track the funding. And what's being allocated right now, what would be asked of the council in the future, there's going to be many bites at the apple, right? When the mayor talks about local appropriation, or even the revenue that he was mentioning wasn't included in there, that actually would fall under local appropriation. The chief mentioned that, getting something going now and having to reevaluate, is it working? Do we have the funding? Is this the right course of action? Those types of things are ultimately going to have to come back in front of the council. So I don't know if that answers it specifically, but the things that excite me, like the data piece, like the ability to be able to actually set those benchmarks and then hold ourselves accountable as a city, as government, this will allow for that to happen in a way that we haven't been able to do before.
And everything Rory said, but also there are benchmarks. I mean, there's nothing we prepared for tonight, but if we're talking about, better managing city-owned properties, for example, there are benchmarks that we can highlight and say, okay, have we made an inventory of all our how many of these properties do we want to, between now and the next, like we can create our measurable goals and outcomes and strategies that we can measure to deter, you know what I mean? So they're there and they can be unidentified. Like I said, it just wasn't, I didn't.
No, and it's okay. I'm not trying to, this isn't like a gotcha question.
No, I'm just saying,
just
like,
straight up, like,
it's possible to create.
For $1 million, I do want to, feel like it's cool if I can ask that question, because I think it's important, and I'm glad to hear it. I not that I would think you wouldn't. It wasn't in the plan, so I wanted to have the opportunity to make sure that that's part of what's going into your decisions. Obviously, like, I know that there's benchmarks. I mean, I worked at City Hall for 5 years. I know what the benchmarks are for half of these things, and I'm thrilled about the rental registry. I've been asking for that. I mean, Sean is right. I am a nerd about the vacant building conference. Like, there's a lot of things I really, really like that has been presented to us, but I do think it's a worthy question, and I didn't see it in the plan. I didn't see your slide deck before this, so I'm not trying to, like...
I'm not thinking that, though. I'm just saying,
I'm just making sure, because, that's all. I wasn't trying to insult anyone.
No, I didn't take it as unless I...
No, thank you. I think that's a great point, though, with the measurable outcomes. I actually wrote that down in the beginning of the slideshow. It was a while, so I forgot. But it's great that we bring up the measurable outcomes, because it's important to be able to compare, contrast, and make sure that we're either on point or we're going off point, and we need to get back to where the goals originally were outlined. But I think the only thing for me, I agree with a lot of the stuff that's in the plan. I think the piece for me is the 13 officers, the cameras, just because, the cameras, it's cool to have them, but I feel like
we're not doing 13 officers. We're scrapped that.
So you're doing 5 now. 5.
Well, so we're not. We budget for 95. We're casting the net, and through our attrition beyond the grant, the goal is to be at the 95. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're not going to have more than, you know what I'm saying? So it's, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm getting what you're at.
But we're not, the original idea of bringing our numbers over 100, that, you know, we heard loud and clear and we agreed. And
well, the thing is that even with that, I'm not necessarily against bringing the numbers over 100 if we can fund it and make it make sense, right? And if we go through, the thing is for me is that
we can't fund it.
Right, I know that's a major piece, right? But like there's still like the piece of like certain components of the audit. Like, and I hate to bring it up, not that I hate to bring it up, but like I don't want to bring it up because this is a whole different piece. But there are certain pieces of that I feel like could help with some of that, right? So the one piece is the identification of positions that could be civilian positions can allow for more officers to actually be on the street than be behind a desk. So that's the piece for me. Like the MRI report literally asks that we do a study of the positions within the department to see what positions can be switched to civilians, so that way it'll save us on costs, right? Because a civilian position, it costs way less than paying someone overtime as a police officer. But at the same time, we're going to actually have police officers on the street. So when you have 95 officers, you'll have 95 officers that are doing police work, not 84, right, or 85 type of thing. So to me, that's important. It's not in the plan now or here, but later on down the road, like doing something like that is super important. So that way we can see where our inefficiencies are and we can have those extra officers.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in regards to the audit, not to get off on an audit track, I don't want to do that. It's pretty late. I am preparing what we've been doing. So we've been looking at all that stuff. Obviously, the audit was done at the police department, so obviously we're looking at it. A lot of that, you're right, this plan, by getting our numbers up, is going to help us do a lot of the things that the audit asked us to do in regards to training, in regards to track, all those things, right? And that was part of this whole thing. I'm putting together a document that I'll share with the council at the appropriate time. I need a little more time to really finalize it, but what we've tried to produce is, my best way to describe it is almost like a living document that we're working as we do things, right? One of the things, you know, the audit said about cameras in the cells, right? That's been done. So we're like checking those off, right? And we're gonna produce a document very shortly for you, because I know the council was talking about bringing us back in about it, and so what we want to do is we want to have that document that we can produce that's going to show you this is what the audit said. This is where we're at. Some things we're not going to be able to do until we do some of the other first things, right? Like the big ticket item everyone talks about is accreditation. Well, accreditation is a big deal, but you have to get a lot of other things knocked off before you can even go into that world of accreditation. So getting these done, and that's what I want to produce this document, so that in my vision, it's sort of color-coded, like green, yellow, and red, right? Like green is done. Yellow is we're working on it, and red is like we're not there yet, but it's gonna potentially show funding source, where we're at in that process, and I was trying to get that together for when we do have that conversation, which is another night, right? So that we can produce that, and that way the council could see that, you know, some of these things have been taken care of, so they're done, right? We're done. We got them done. And then this document in the future could almost be used, in my mind, in my vision of it, as other things pop up. We could still, just because it's talking about the audit, it could be added as a goal or something.
Somewhat of a report then, responding back to the audit,
yes.
right? With measurable outcomes, yes. Letting people know what the goals are and what we've done now, what we're going to do to attain certain goals. That's
my plan.
That would be perfect. I would love that. That would be great.
And every identified recommendation on the, you know, each one is circumstantial based on, you know what I mean? Like, so when he says color coded, you know, it can give where we are with it, an update, and some are low hanging fruit, others are opportune moments when you just got to wait for the right opportunity, and then others a little bit more long term. And so that I think by identifying by color codes with an update on what's going on with implementing that.
No, I think that would be a perfect document, and it would be a living document, as you mentioned. You start from the beginning just to show us what it is, and as time goes on, even other chiefs can use what are they crossing off, what are they checking off. I mean, that would wholeheartedly help us understand how we're approaching the audit at the end of the day.
Yeah, because I just want to, since people are watching at home, because I know it comes up. It's not like the report was done and nothing has been happening. I think, again, back to us, we just haven't been doing a good job communicating to the public like what's been going on, and there's many factors because of that. But nevertheless, I think it's been probably about 6 months now, and it's a good time to do some sort of an update. So we've been working on that so we can try to clear any, make sure that everyone's on the same page and whatnot with, as far as that implementation's concerned. So
I appreciate that, and thank you guys for your time. And the one thing I would ask, hold on, before Jose, one thing I would ask, if anybody, if you could send it via email, maybe like a flow chart of like chief, and then how it breaks down. I think I had it before. I'm not
like
sure.
An org chart, you mean?
Yeah, like an org chart, or like
we got one of those.
Narcotics division,
Organizational chart?
Yeah, and where everything lands. There's captains, then there's lieutenants, and then how many are here, and then how many are patrol. So I mean, that would have been great in there. So that way, when we're talking about the officers, wherever they would fit and how they would match or whatnot, like just so that way I have a better understanding visually, because I'm a visual person more or less.
Okay.
Thank you. And Councilor Jose Maldonado-Velez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Should be quick. First of all, appreciate the presentation. I think it made it much more clear as to like what the plan is, and appreciate the statements around the MRI study. I think that's been a question for a lot of us in the council, a lot of members in the community, like what steps are being taken after that study came out. So we are looking forward to seeing what has happened. I do want to thank the mayor for the commitment to the Office of Tenant Protection and taking active steps to creating that. I think that's been an ask for over a year. And, a lot of community members, including members in Neighbor to Neighbor, are really appreciative of that. But I do remember when the commitment was made back in September, there was also, September was it? I don't know, a couple months ago. There was also the mayor, Josh, who said that you were going to build like a group or a committee of some sorts of community members. I'm wondering if that's still part of the plan, just to make sure that.
So I remember when we met in my office and we talked about it, said, yes, I want to do that, but I'm not there yet because I wanted to have the housing navigator person here to do that, to be the person that did that. You know what I mean? And I would work with that group so that it's not, so I'm not, you know what I mean? So that's what I mean. So it's like, we weren't there yet, but I wanted to do it. It's just, it's a little more complex and I wanted to make sure that there's this housing navigator. I think we brought it to ordinance a long time ago. I was hoping we got that position in person sooner rather than later. And then ideally was to come into the new fiscal year where that person would start, or we'd hire that person, because I think we had appropriate in the budget, but it wasn't in Schedule A, so it scaled us back a little bit. And then, that person is going to need, and that goes back to the earlier points that Councilor Rivera was making, like, when we're talking about community response, like, what's the plan? What's the stakeholder input? Getting people together to help build that. But I need that person to facilitate that. So it's not, hey, can I get on your calendar every week so we can update you, Mayor? You know what I mean? It becomes, but that's what I think I said that at that meeting. We want to bring that person in so we can do that.
I'm asking, well, thank you for that answer. I think it made it clear, because I think when we think of just a committee, we think, the mayor is going to be leading this committee to the CREATE department.
And I would love to.
But I think to your points tonight, you're one person. I know there's an incoming counselor that says we have a spending problem. I remember the mayor's office at one point used to have like 5 staff members, 2 offices, and right now there's only 2 of y'all or 3 of y'all. So appreciate the response. And still support it. I just want to still make sure that we're getting it done. Thank you.
It's moving.
Thank you, Councilor Maldonado-Velez. Any more questions? I will entertain a motion to wait. That all the orders are complied.
Could you guys go to the finance committee meeting?
I will probably go to the.
I go to the
I'll be there.
committee.
You can answer a lot of questions that come up. And
Yeah, so I wish a lot of them. Yeah, I really wish a lot of them were here today because a lot of their questions are going to come up.
I know.
And
Again.
This was a good dry run a little bit. So
it's a good one.
We're going to regroup and say what could we have done differently, and then
We could also send out an email with a link to this.
Yeah.
And be like, hey.
Well, the link to the YouTube, right? Feel free to watch it. So thank you guys again for the time. It's almost, 9:35. I apologize. It's just, we had a lot of orders that kind of made sense to bunch together. So that way everything.
It all fit.
Yeah, it all flowed together. Kind of helps your argument, helps some of the arguments that some of the people in the community make. And it's very informational for people that are watching on TV today. And for me, some of the meetings that I host, or most of them, hopefully, if you're not getting any content, at least you're getting information that you're learning something new about city government. So thank you all for your time, and I will entertain a motion that all the orders that we listed before are complied with.
So motion that item 3, 7, 8, 9, and 10 be complied with.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion that the meeting is adjourned.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good night, and thank you.